And welcome into the SPL. Thank you for joining us. This will be our last day of Week 9, and since it is such a great occasion, I thought we'd line up some really good sets for y'all here today. I also thought we'd get an expert here on the desk, so I am joined by my man, Mifflin. You just got through with the SEC, man. You ready to step up a little bit here to this SPL game?
I'm beyond ready, man. I'm ready to see the top dogs contend against each other. No more rookie mistakes, no more easy kills. I want to see everything hard fought and earned.
And that's exactly what we'll be seeing here today. Our first match will be the Renegades up against Radiance. Then we have Obey up against Ghost, one that in the standings looks pretty far apart, but I think that we know in practice will actually be pretty close. Let's take a look at those standings. Renegades are down there in 7th place at 4-8, but if they can get this win, they'll improve to 5-8 and at least stay close to United. Remember, you want to at least be in that top 6. You can still make it into the playoffs and try and get some points. Remember, your regular season seeding really only kind of factors into where you are into the playoffs, and that's where you earn those points, which factors into the second phase as well, and basically towards getting into Worlds. So these games are all critically important at this point, Myth.
I've got to imagine Radiance, or Renegades rather, is coming into this set thinking about that and only that. That weight, that extra bit of need to win has got to be playing on their minds, and it's going to make it harder for them to really shake off an early loss. I think Renegades, more than anyone anywhere else, needs to win Game 1 to keep their mentality straight, because this set means a lot to them. Everyone wants to make playoffs, and Renegades incredibly close to not making it, and it's only going to be that much harder if they aren't able to win out in this set.
It is. And Myth, how much of this do you think kind of comes down to the mid lane between these two? Because I think that Big Man Tings is quietly having a monster year in the mid lane for Radiance, but on Renegade's side, I feel like Venenu has been their most sort of volatile player, you know, as if that he's been kind of up and down for them, sometimes having those big highlight reel performances and sometimes kind of vanishing. How important do you see the mid lane matchup here?
It's going to come down to just about every single step of the way, but I think highlighting mid is absolutely the way to go because, as you said, BMT has been incredibly consistent. Ven, not so much. But I think the top end that Ven has shown us might be a little bit higher than what BMT has shown us on his high end. My eyes are going to be on this duo lane, especially considering how volatile Radiance's duo has been and how really good Renegades have been going through Barracuda and Jake having a fantastic beginning of the year performance from the 408 first time in the SPL, and he's adapted incredibly well, whereas Cyclone and Aurora have been seeing a little bit of a struggle as the year goes on. I think that if Renegades are looking to push a lead early on, they should go through that strategy that seems like a lot of teams adapt when playing against Radiance and really run it down that long lane.
It's interesting. The last time we saw Radiance play, we saw that pressure, but it was not onto the long lane, right? Actually, Cyclone and Aurora, for the most part, had a good game. That pressure was built up in solo. So I think that we're kind of right to highlight that the long lane has struggled, but what Radiance really need to show us is their ability to adapt on the fly, right? When their opponent's strategy becomes clear to them, what's their ability to sort of make some adjustments and adapt on the fly? And that's going to be tough up against Renegades because this team is unpredictable. You're always adapting on the fly, not just in terms of where they're putting their pressure.
Yeah, Renegades and PK specifically have such unique playstyles in that it's a different playstyle every single set, let alone every single week. These guys are constantly adapting to try and shift their focus to match what they think is going to work against the opposition. And that's very different from what we're seeing from these other teams. United, or Ghost rather, are always looking to run it down in the early game. Sanguine, always looking for that late game draft where they can group up as 5, and they don't have the same degree of adaptability that this Renegades roster has. Radiance is going to be on the hot seat, and they have to know that Renegades are the challenger going into this, and they're going to be looking for something maybe a little bit unorthodox.
They are the challenger coming in, but I think this Radiance team, to talk about them a bit more here, Myth, I mean, I think that they have become exactly like their record. For a lot of the time, I was saying that this team was way better, perhaps, than maybe what their record would say. We know they have all this talent there, but at a certain point, when someone, tells you who they are, I think you have to listen, and I think this team might really just be middle-of-the-road strength right now. What do you think, Myth? Do you think that they still are not quite performing to their level, or do you think that we've seen enough, and this is maybe just where this Radiance squad is?
You can only say you're in a slump for so long, right? Cyclone Spin has been saying they've been in a slump for, 3-4 weeks now? At some point, it's not a slump anymore. As you highlighted, it's really just what these guys are capable of. But again, and I'm sure there are plenty of Radiance truthers in the chat, it's so hard to count these guys out just because of the name recognition that they've all accrued. I mean, Cyclone Spin, BMT, Adapt King, rather, Benji being one of the best solo laners in the world right now. These guys do have the individual pieces of the puzzle, they just haven't put it together just yet, and I'm scared to see what this team looks like when they do create that cohesive picture.
Yeah, I mean, if this really is only 50% and they could double in strength or something like that, then yeah, it could be scary. But until we see it, this is the Radiance that's in front of us, right? So let's head into those picks and bans for game number 1 and see if those adjustments perhaps start there. Radiance will be in that first pick spot, and you highlighted it earlier on. Let's see if they try and prioritize this duo lane a little bit. We saw even in a losing effort, when Aurora has Hercules, it's game-changing from the man. He makes a game that they should have lost in 20 minutes. Drag out to 35 or something like that. What do you expect to be prioritized here in this match?
I'm really expecting Heimdall to get picked up early and quickly in this draft. There's no way Renegades lets Hercules through, shown off in that first ban. So I think that it's really making sure that Cyclone Spin gets something that he's comfortable on. We've seen him play the Heimdall. We've seen him play the Rom. These recent buffs, these recent unbans have really expanded his god pool there. So I think Renegades are going to shift their focus, maybe try and ban out something else, maybe the mid laner, maybe the soul laner. Because right now, Cyclone Spin's god pool is growing every single week. I don't think target banning him's the way in.
It might not be, man. I mean, because Cyclone Spin has shown that he can play basically whatever it is that you end up leaving to him. So really, you had to try and ban out stuff that works towards whatever your strategy is. I mean, we've talked about it with some of these teams before, and it's starting to seem more and more like they don't come in maybe planning to target any specific area. They come in knowing what they think is strong, and based on what they get and where they see weaknesses in their opponent's drafts, they head there. So Radiance, I imagine, going to just be trying to prioritize the very best stuff they can. Banning away the King Arthur, the Hou-Yi, and the Aphrodite. That's all fairly standard. Umoja, Hercules too, but this leaves a lot of those strong picks up. As you mentioned, the Heimdall is still open.
Heimdall's open, Hell's open. Every single strong mage that we can name, Merlin, Raijin, they're all open. You're trading off a lot here, but with so many mid laners available right now, first pick likely going to go towards getting that priority hunter. I'm thinking it's likely going to be a Heimdall picked up first, or maybe even a Rom, something that they're going to be comfortable on, and that's fantastic. Heimdall getting picked up, that's a certain degree of survivability. There's a lot of 1v1 potential there. You can survive just about anything with a CC immunity and dash from your ultimate. You've got a teleport with the Bifrost. He's got CC and knockup. This god is a little bit of everything, including a walking ward.
Well, what about, where do you think Sobek's value is at this point? Because he's another one that we've seen prioritized at the top end of these picks and bans lately as Raijin comes in here for Renegades with their first overall pick. Do you think that he's one deserving of those top end spots? And if so, do you want to see him here?
I think that Sobek has the potential to absolutely shift the face of the game once he's allowed to rotate out of solo, but when the stakes are this high for Renegades, I don't think that we're going to see him picked up, because it seems like they want to get involved a little bit earlier on. They don't want to leave it up to just stagnating out through the mid game and then winning once Sobek rotates in, and Sobek can absolutely turn a team fight, but he's not going to change the pace of the match. If Sobek rotates in at level 18 and the rest of his team is still behind, he's not going to do enough to really bring it back for the squad. Instead, I like what we're seeing from the Renegades. Hunbot's getting picked up, early aggression, the ability to control the map, be an initiator. Radiance doing some of the same. They have Terra for counter initiation. They have Thor for the ability to dunk into the back of these team fights. This is looking like it's going to be a highly scrappy game.
It is a bit interesting, though, right, that they choose to go with the Unbots. This is certainly something that Lasber can play well, but I feel like a lot of his success comes when those early, maybe like right around the 2-minute ganks really go well, and I don't feel like that's Unbots' best moment. His Pele's usually do well there, too. Do you think that we might have to see him waiting till more like level 5 with this pick?
Hunbots definitely gets a lot stronger with level 5, but name me a god that doesn't besides a stance switcher. He has a deceptively strong level 2 gank. If he gets the jump, he gets the Sacred Monkey, you get essentially a double hi-rez proc from his passive. He's able to deal a deceptive amount of damage in the early game. So an early Hunbots gank could come to fruition, but there is a higher threshold of execution than you would have with something like the Pele, like a Thanatos. That said, hitting level 5 in the jungle, it's going to come at 4 minutes. If you could just stagnate for 4 minutes, you're fine. If you can go for an early gank, go for it regardless. Those level 2 ganks aren't really happening just because the jungler is strong at doing it. It's really about whether or not the opportunity arises, if the enemy team has moved too far up, if the wave pressure fits your team. There's a lot that goes into the thought process, more so than me Pele, me strong early.
Sure. Well, I would imagine you'd want someone good early if you're doing something early. It will be this new look Amir that comes in for Renegades, though, and Baba Yaga hovered as well. So remember, we might be seeing a few of these changes. Baba Yaga is now available. We saw her picked up by Whirlwind, I believe, the other day, and was top player damage by a lot, Mifflin. So clearly, if this Baba Yaga is allowed to get through what can be an underwhelming early game, that late game is hard to deal with.
Yeah, but the early game, though, we can't ignore it. It is incredibly weak. Her damage output, her ability to clear waves is so easy to exploit early on, but once she does get to that level 15, 16, if she makes it there from even, the artillery strike damage from a range is absolutely crippling. And it's so hard to kill her once you get some of that utility online. If you go the double stack build, she's going to be tankier than just about any other mage. She's going to be able to just find the damage safely. She's got CC immunity in the ultimate, damage mitigation, a jump as well. This god is incredibly slippery come 20-minute mark.
And it can be difficult to try and prevent Baba Yaga from finding all that additional value. We saw with Whirlwind's build as well. He was prioritizing a lot of stacking items, Book of Thoth and the Warlock staff, making sure to fully utilize that passive. So I'm very interested to see how Radiance, and Big Man Tanks in particular, is going to be playing her, gets value out of it. You leaning either way, though, now that you get to see both of these drafts, Smith?
I gotta give it to Radiance. They've got the bridge pick inside of Thor to make sure that Baba Yaga gets through that turbulent early game. They've got Amma, who's got fantastic rotations out of solo. Heimdall's got some of the highest solo potential in the lane, and he's incredibly safe. Radiance's comp is gonna do really well at just about every phase of the game, whereas Renegades are going to be really reliant on this Hun bots for a lot of their initiation. Ymir is highly exploitable in the early game. It's going to have a lot of execution, but I like Radiance's draft.
Yeah, maybe the Amma and the Terra could struggle against that wall from the Ymir. There's a lot of matchups to keep your eye on as we move into game number 1.
We only have 6 official games left in the SPL for phase number 1 prior to playoffs. This is a big one for Radiance and the Renegades. It is Dolson and Aggro on the call, with Doug, of course, observing for us here in our first set of the day. And Aggro, this is a big one, not only for Radiance, but for Renegades. If Radiance are able to win this set, they lock in their spot for the playoffs. Renegades, a team that has shown us potential, still trying to fight into that top 6, though. A win here would help make that a little bit clearer.
It's critical for them to find it because they're really competing with E United, and Renegades has the head-to-head there. They've beaten E United both times they've played so far this year, so all they really have to do is make sure they tie E United's record, but E United's incredible upset of Space Station yesterday, I think, really has thrown a wrench in Renegades' playoff plans. I think Renegades was looking pretty good to make it. Now, I think it's a bit of an uphill battle.
Well, United has the Knights, and then Renegades have Obey for their final sets here in the SPL, so something to look forward to there as this journey continues. And I think there's been a lot of fun changes, honestly, to follow here in 7.5. A lot that's trickled over here into the SPL, and actually here in the long lane, I think we get 2 great examples of it with Jake on this Ymir. Some recent changes have maybe brought the Ymir out to the forefront. Lots of utility still in that kit, but maybe now a little bit extra that makes it more viable of a pick.
Man, it's so crazy how a little change, I think, really has just revitalized pro players' willingness to play this god and give him a shot. And yes, being able to take down the wall is a big deal. It puts it on cooldown right away. You get to put it up more often this way. You don't accidentally hurt your team. All those things are very strong. But I don't think that's the reason why Ymir is seeing play necessarily. He's seeing play because he still snowballs games very effectively, has great matchups against some gods in the meta that really can struggle against that wall. He still brings a ton of utility. Remember, when he applies that passive, it doesn't just make his auto attacks do more damage, it makes them do less damage. And that's really, really important. I think that he still has the exact same problems. Ymir games end quickly one way or another because he either snowballs them or he gets snowballed on. But it really isn't the wall change that takes him from unplayable to really, really good all of a sudden. I think it really just made people realize that he's probably worth picking against certain compositions all along.
Yeah, sometimes a change like that just gets some eyes back onto the god. We have seen a couple Ymirs up to this point where they have been heavily punished in the early game, but it tended to be as long as you can get off the wall in a good stun, maybe all those deaths stacked against you don't matter as much as maybe they seem. Now Heimdall here in the long lane, kind of continuing that conversation. We've seen great things, I'd argue, out of Heim over the last couple of games, now that he's available here in the SPL. The early game damage can't be ignored, but it's really that late game solo potential. And maybe for somebody like Cyclone Spin, we've talked about, you know, maybe how he's struggled potentially against expectations for him, though he is top 3 hunters kill-wise here in the league. Maybe a Heimdall is going to be a good fit for Cyclone here in Radiance as a result.
Yeah, I just think that Heimdall doesn't really have a weak point at any point in the game. I mean, he doesn't do an insane amount of damage early because his attack chain is really slow, but if you can hit that third hit of that attack chain, that overhand toss,
it swings.
It hits really, really hard. Maybe you feel like he's not going to get that off a whole lot early on, but his wave clear is pretty solid. He hits harder than anybody in the game come late game. And I'm going to say it every time he gets picked, this god's biggest advantage is the fact that he is really, really hard to dive for an assassin or a warrior.
Yes.
He just has a lot of self-peel tools. The Bifrost, he sees you coming. It's really hard to surprise this character because of the vision that his one provides. And that ultimate just forcing you to pick up beads. And if you don't have them, you don't get to play against this guy as a backline diver. So I think that that's his biggest strength, is that he can kill anybody while also keeping himself safe more so than probably any other hunter in the game. I think it's probably a little bit easier to dive Jing than it is to dive Heimdall.
Sure.
Because you can at least kill Jing Wei before that airstrike goes off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you're killing Heimdall before he gets his damage off, man. It's just so bursty.
Well, it's certainly difficult, and there's some nuance we've seen as well with the use of that Bifrost, even little side steps, full-blown retreats, full-blown re-engages, moving from one side of the map all the way to the other to kind of rotate in, pseudo-teleporty into a fight. So lots of nuance there in that kit. Jake has made his way, though, over to the red side of the map here. Radiance is there. Aurora will find a route onto him, but Ymir plenty tanky enough here in this early game. It's been a quiet first 4.5 minutes, and Jake maybe now just being the first one to kind of step over that midway line. I say that as Lasbro looking for a speed buff invade there as well. We've talked a lot about kind of the different matchups, and the Des did as well. I think Lasbro adapting is going to be absolutely pivotal here in this game. You look at the rocket kill performances Lasbro has had. Adapting has been there as well. This is going to be a fun one to watch as this set goes on.
Yeah, I think both these guys have very different play styles, but can end up in kind of the same place where both adapting won't necessarily try and force it early on, though he is right here up against Solar Troll, because Benji starts off the CC chain nicely. SOT still alive.
Oh, he's able to shout and get his way out of there. Well timed on the rage transformation. A little bit of luck, a little bit of skill there for SOT, but actually I think that's a great example of what we need to look for here for adapting. Get Radiance off to a quick start, especially on this Thor. You hit that level 5, now level 6. Drop down some Anvil of Dawns. Get some action rolling here. If nothing else, now you've made SOT uncomfortable against Benji. Full health and mana for the Ama. Mid-health now for the Kulkullen. If nothing else, you've bought map pressure here in the solo lane.
And it could open up a blue buff invade. I mean, Solo doesn't have his teleport for about a minute, so you're feeling good about that. But Awesome Jake actually managed to solo invade. Radiance is red. Didn't even cost him his ultimate. Just kind of acting like a secondary jungler. And Ymir jungle is a legitimate thing. You can play this character in the jungle with relative ease. This is the pressure he brings.
He's going to lock down that wall. All that damage out of nowhere. Aurora didn't expect it. And Barracuda, the icing on the cake, is the airstrike there. It seemed, again, you think back, it really was Jake that's been kind of maneuvering deep into the Radiant side of the map, steals that red buff away. It almost seemed like it had to be this Ymir in this long lane to get the action rolling here for the Renegades, and Barracuda's going to benefit for first blood.
And I love this type of character for Jake. I mean, you want him to be aggressive. As Benji's being aggressive on this right-hand side, Lasbro really just here as an insurance to try and get some pressure over on that right side.
Well, Cyclone was looking for an ultimate onto Barracuda. Remember, there's the disengage from the Heimdall. It looks for a moment like he's bit off a little bit too much, but able to disengage. Was Beads burnt there from Barracuda, so not all is lost for Cyclone Spin, and maybe now more than ever, once Lasbra gets that Fear No Evil off of cooldown, potentially a long lane gank in the cards with a Beadsless Barracuda on that side.
Yeah, I think that that's certainly something that both junglers are going to be looking at, because now you know that Cyclone's ultimate is on cooldown for a little bit, and his Bifrost is going to be on a pretty lengthy cooldown with the distance he traveled right there. But adapting on this side of the map, Anvil of Dawn already ready to go, and it's Jake who gets set behind. And that's the nature of this Terra-Ymir matchup. Both these gods, I think, love playing against the other. And right there, just Terra has the initiative.
Well, the action continues in the mid lane, and haven't really gotten a chance to touch on this mid lane matchup. Not so much Veneno. We've seen him on the Raijin plenty, and he's looked good doing it. Big man Tings and Baba Yaga more specifically, not a matchup we've been able to look at all that often. We might have to rejoin that conversation. Lasbra rotating back to the solo lane. No Fear No Evil here, so kill potential severely limited. But he is buying a little bit of map pressure, adapting here to play as well, but it all fizzles out with not much to show.
And you see the impact of this Fear No Evil nerf that Hunbats took a little bit ago. Still doesn't have that ultimate ready to go. And now Cyclones is up. And now that moment of vulnerability that Cyclone may have had on that side of the map is already gone. Now you're looking at mid lane, though. I mean, Tings is falling behind. He's level 9.
Ouch!
They talked about it on the desk, man. I played a good amount of Baba trying to get a feel for this character, because, man, she is weird. Which is exactly what you'd expect from the witch in the woods, right? She's a weird old lady who's doing her thing, but I mean, the RNG that's built into the 1 and to the 2, it's really impactful.
Benji beneath his tier 1 tower now. Lasbra has that Fear No Evil, and that's going to be the up-down onto Benji. It only seemed like a matter of time, I think, before there was a kill springing out of this solo lane. It's been the junglers rotating up there. Cyclone Spin looking for the ultimate. Bifrost is going to be walled off, but he's not going to travel that far anyway. It's really awesome Jake now on the attack. Cyclone Spin's going to get out alive. Jake stunned down. The freeze won't connect, and Cyclone Spin stays alive, turns around, and BMT rotates through on the assist.
Yeah, a bit of an awkward ultimate there from Barra. I mean, you feel like that should have been a kill on the Cyclone for sure. Jake plays that really well. Puts Cyclone in a position where if you want to start trying to get out with that Bifrost Crystal, you're walking into my Shards of Ice, and that damage will do the dirty work for me. Then he walls him off the Bifrost Crystal, heads up by Cyclone to not stay stubborn in that moment, places another one just to get around and use some mobility. But Barra, you could tell the alarm bells were going off. He knew a rotation was coming. He knew that he was running out of time on that kill, and that airstrike ends up taking him away and not doing the damage that he needed.
Jake will throw up the wall there, but Venenu has rotated through. Tycho drums over onto adapting. Last one used to taunt him back in. Won't result in the kill, but beads are burnt by adapting. And now this maybe opens up this side of the map just a little bit. No red buff up, no purple buff up. But you can get a bit deeper vision control here for the Renegades. Some wards littering this side of the map.
And now you're getting to the point where you're hoping that Big Man is going to start to feel impactful, because not only does Baba not do a whole lot of damage, her base numbers aren't horrible, but you just feel like you're not clearing the wave for some weird reason. I mean, you compare it to her 1 to other line mage clear abilities, the numbers feel the same, but for some reason they just feel like they're not clearing as effectively as you would like. And she really needs levels in order to get her 2 to the point where she has enough ingredients where it's effective.
Aurora's going to drop the ultimate here onto Jake. There's not the follow-up yet. Adapting will slam down here. Barracuda's going to be able to dash away, fearing now the onslaught of the Renegades. Rotations coming from mid lane, and Venenu and Lasbra as well is hanging somewhat close by. So that'll be all there was to write about that one. Surprised at all, though, Aggro, to see the level of, I don't know, fireworks potentially here in the long lane. Might get some more as adapting is rotating down as well. Aurora will look for the root, but no re-engage with no Anvil of Dawn.
And Aurora actually beads right there, expecting Jake to step up and stun him. He was going to try and pre-beads it so he could dash through and find that initiation, but now no beads for him, and what do you know? Lasbra on the way.
See ya, adapting. That's a Fear No Evil and an execute from Venenu. Tycho drums as well. We'll get a roar melted down. It's a double kill in the mid lane for the Renegades here. It's the 4-man rotation on over. And look at SOT. The map pressure all the way in between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower. Seems like the Renegades kind of running away with this one on all sides of the map. They're going to grab themselves a 4K gold lead 12 minutes in.
And it's really just on this left side, really good pressure release by Lasbra a couple times on that right-hand side where Adapting gets off to that early good start, sets Benji up. Lasbra comes over a couple times just to make sure that Benji doesn't start snowballing a huge lead and sets Lasbra up. And then the character kind of takes over for SOT. Cullen just has more pressure than Ama at this point in the game. But that's really just allowing all this pressure to build up on the left-hand side for Radiance because Adapting really can't be aggressive over here as soon as he loses those purification beads. Ven has played really, really well on this Raijin. He's been pressuring out Big Man, taking advantage of the bad Baba early game because I do think that Radiance's team fight come late game is really, really strong. And we saw them kind of rely on this late game setup before and have it pay off. So Renegade's not letting off the gas.
I've seen so many aggressive airstrikes here from Barracuda. Cyclone's been taken low. But that's the ultimate over onto Jake. Aurora will stun him down. The ultimate maybe just to save Cyclone's life. There's the Bifrost, but it'll only be a side-to-side rotation. Adapting down. He comes. Lasbra's here to fight as well. Barracuda taken low, but he's turned around the damage onto the Thor. Venenu now has come from the mid lane. SOT joins the party as well. Beautiful double stun from Aurora. But it'll result in nothing but death as Venenu finds his third kill of the game.
I mean, look at these level disparities, Dave. 13 to 10 in the jungle for Lasbra, 15 to just now 14 from Big Man Tings, and Ven's been all over the map, man. He's rotated a duo twice now in just 14 minutes. You've got a 2-level lead in support as well. I mean, Renegades are really just picking this early pressure sort of composition, and really you don't think of Hunbats is the early pressure god or Jing Wei, but the Renegades are just playing them like early pressure. Lasbra really hasn't been ganking as much. He's been doing a good job farming. My ult's up, I'll gank, farm from there on out. I've just really liked the way that Lasbra's played. I think Ven is playing lights out right now, and Radiance are really trying to rely on their team fight. But Dave, they've got to get there, man. I mean, at this rate, 5K in 14 minutes, it won't matter how good their team fight is at this point.
It's about as brutal as it gets here, as it could get worse for Benji. Lasbra here with a Fear No Evil, but the dash away from Benji will be enough. Adapting hanging close by, has Anvil of Dawn shortly, about 75% of the way charged there. It's going to be looking over towards this blue buff, but there's a 3-level discrepancy. The 2-tap is only going to be good for about a fifth of the HP. Could be a re-engage, though, for Adapting. Aurora, Big Man Tings, Benji all rotating over. Where will Anvil of Dawn go? He's looked for Jake, hasn't found it. And Adapting will retreat here. Maybe it's good to kind of focus on Jake here as well as he blinks in, walls off Aurora, but won't follow up with the stun. All 3 of the kills for Radiance are on this Ymir. That's the conversation we had to open up this set, where Ymir can get bullied out a little bit, but if he's still providing some extra utility, who cares?
Who cares? Jake's had a great game, and that's a good observation for sure. I love you could almost see Ven or whoever it was on Renegades yanking on the leash they've got Jake on, because Jake's he's chomping at the bit at all times, man. He's trying to get out there and scrap. Blinks, finds the wall, and then you feel the hesitation, like it's the dog going through training. They just learned not to jump up on the couch, but man, does it look comfortable. They really want to get up there. But Jake's a good boy. He lets the fight go. And what does it do? The pressure that Renegades have put on the map, the fact that Aurora knows that he's really vulnerable right now, allows Renegades to still go and get that Pyromancer with the map pressure.
Now Benji will be suffering a return gank from Lasbra and SOT, but it'll only result in half of the HP of Benji being taken away. Gold lead is now pulled just around 6K for the Renegades. And I feel like as a team, the Renegades, what they've struggled with has kind of been this transition from trying to get something going into the early game, into the mid, and then hopefully not relying on Barracuda to make miracle plays by the end. This is a refreshing look, I have to admit, for the Renegades, and it's a welcome change, I'm sure, for them as well.
They just look so much better when they're proactive, don't they? I mean, this team, it's so important to find your team identity and know what you guys are good at. Like, not every team is going to be good at the same things. It's 5 individual players, and what's so great about MOBAs is there's no 100% correct way to play. There are things that you can do to maximize your chances, but it's really coming down to playstyle and execution and mechanics and decision making and all these little micro things that makes the game so hard. Renegades don't have to play Radiance brand of Smite. They should play Renegades brand of Smite. And what I've seen and when they look the most successful, it's when Renegades are W keying from minute one. You know, let it go a little bit more Jake for all of them and kind of go with the flow. And I think that they've done that in this game, and there's no question that it's paid off. You got to transition it, though. I mean, these XP leads only last for so long. Your 3-level lead in the jungle is only good for 3-4 more levels, most likely, because the way minions scale just gives you so much XP in the late game. If Adapting gets 1 shutdown kill, he'll get a level and a half. These XP leads are not as damning as they once were, and I do think that Renegades need to be on time for these things like Oni Fury and Pyromancer and start grouping up and going for towers. The fact that Radiance has every tower still up is both a positive and a negative. It means that Renegades haven't really broken the map wide open yet. They haven't done that, which is bad, but it also means that this 6k gold lead can get a lot bigger really, really quickly if Renegades can get that gold out of the banks, so to speak.
Well, I suppose at this point in the game, you're 18 minutes in, you're down by 5, 6, 7k gold. If you're Radiance, you have to look at maybe your routes back into the game. I think under the face of all the pressure that he's had in his lane, Benji still a level lead over SOT is certainly something to hang your hat on. And then still 2 levels down. We talk so much about that scaling potential of this Baba Yaga as the game goes on. Now a 1 level deficit there to Venenu in that mid lane. Not to scoff at Raijin late game damage, but maybe if you're Radiance looking for your route back into this game, it is continuing to punish things like this. SOT between a tier 1 and a tier 2 tower could be an opening for big man Tings to grab an assist, grab another kill, and get something going. Will be no rage transformation for SOT here. All 4 members are brought from Radiance here. That's going to be a big kill over onto SOT, but opens up the door to the Fury for the Renegades.
Yeah, this is a good call by Radiance. No way they could ever contest that Oni Fury in the first place. So let's split the map. SOT proxies at the wrong time and ends up getting punished for it. That opens up the tier 1. Benji wants to get this tier 2. Looks like Renegades might start rotating and won't give this up. I think the big thing to talk about when it comes to Baba late game is, number 1, the build that Heroine was going for pays off far better late game. Going this traditional mage build for Tings makes her ever so slightly stronger in the early game, but I'm not sure it's really worth the trade-off. I'm kind of the same thought as Heroine, that you want to actually leverage this passive more than just using it as a bit of built-in sustain. The thing about Baba late game is really that her damage is hard to react to. It just kind of happens. It's hard to read where the 1 is going in the midst of a team fight. Home Sweet Home, her ultimate, I mean, you spread out that damage. It's a lot of dot damage. It's hard to predict where she's aiming it. You don't see it until it lands. There's no real aiming reticle for her. That level of confusion is really, really advantageous. And so when you start getting into the late game and you've got your 5 ingredient potions and you're pocketing the 3-4 red ones, those are big.
Adapting is being jumped on now, taunted in by Venenu, and that's going to be a lockdown Thor, and Awesome Jake will toss up the wall just to confirm the kill there for Lasbra. Second of the game for the Hun Bats. Benji is in behind the Renegades, but will dash his way out of this one. The proactivity continues for the Renegades. Move in off the Fury, gain some vision control on this red buff side of the map for Radiance. That opens up the doors for a pick here. Aurora and BMT underneath this tier 2 tower, and suddenly maybe it's just Aurora, though. Home Sweet Home use. This is an opening for the Baba Yaga to find some good damage, and Cyclone Spin will as well. Hasbra, no ultimate to rejoin the fight back on this side. The Renegades, shipped down quite low, are going to have to make their way out.
And this is where that team fight potential for Radiance is really evident. I mean, it's this Aurora ultimate straight into the Baba ult. That's a lot of damage. I mean, you can't Aegis Terra ult because it procs off of when you take 4 instances of damage, so you either have to run away and not get hit for all of that. When you Aegis, it doesn't count as being hit by an instance of damage. So you're taking, when Terra presses 4 on you, you're either letting it expire or you're taking that burst damage. There's no in between. And between that and the Home Sweet Home that's going to proc it instantly, that you're going to apply those dots, it seems like everyone on Renegades, you kind of watch them as they run away, and they're all way lower than you kind of think they're going to be. That's the Terra and Baba effect. I really like these two characters together. I think that Renegades, that's a good reality check. We think that we can brute force our way in. Okay, we realize that we got to give a little bit more respect. We've got to understand exactly what Radiance is going to throw at us, and we can use that information for next fight.
My goodness, adapting has just not been comfortable anywhere on this map in the last 45 or so seconds. A minute and a half, if you count both death timers, he's probably been able to play the game for about 15 seconds, walking back out to speed and then immediately being taken down. That's the FG call now for the Renegades. Missing adapting, but no fear, no evil, no taiko drums for the Renegades. Could be an opening for Radiance to move back in, but awesome Jake, he's going to shut down that opening. Aurora's going to have to dash out, stays alive here. BMT is going to get locked down. SOT transforms over into the Rage form. Watch out for Benji, though, here on the back line as FG still pulled by the Renegades.
And that's almost every ult for Renegades. Only Airstrike still up, but Benji, quick beats from him. Love that everyone on Radiance has beads. They need it with this much CC, but it looks like it's still not going to be enough to save Benji because of a great wall from Awesome Jake. Prevents him where he wants to go, and Renegades right back to the FG.
Yeah, Fire Giant one more time being called here. Half HP now. Aurora in range. Has the ultimate. Good wall from Jake, though. Completely locks off that choke point. That might just be enough to confirm it down. Comes adapting into the backline on the attempted steal, but Lasbra is going to move in and help Barracuda finish off the kill. Meanwhile, on the front line, SOT has forced Big Man Tings all the way out. Benji still back and respawning. Fire Giant for another one. Renegades on the push.
That was a great ult from adapting. I mean, imagine if he wasn't the same level as Jake. That could have been a triple for him. He got beads from both Ven and Barra at the exact same time. He did a lot of damage there, but when you're level 16 and 1 and 4 at that point, it's really not going to be that impactful. And this is why getting these early leads is so critical. Jake's having just a fantastic game on this Ymir, and not in the way that I think a lot of Ymir games go, where you're just walling everyone off, you're doing a million damage. His just positioning has been really good. Yes, he's died 4 times, but deaths on Ymir are inevitable. You know, they're going to happen. It's just about mitigating them where you can and making them valuable where you can. And I think that the threat of Jake's positioning has bought Renegades so much space this game. It's really made Ven's job really easy. Ven's had a great game. He earned it, that lead in the early game, but the work of Jake in these team fights has not only made Ven's job easy, but Barra's job easy and Lasbra's job easy. And that's exactly what your support's there to do.
Yeah, 4 out of the 5 deaths, but they've all been impactful. He's certainly set up, he being Jake, this lead now for the Renegades that has eclipsed over 12,000 gold, made its way right into that 13,000 mark for the Renegades. Woes continuing for Radiance. I mean, this has sort of been the slide maybe that we've seen from this team. They go, and it's been the same story week after week, where they start off 0-4 and then have, only won a handful of their last 8 or 9 games. It's been brutal here for Radiance, and this is, a game that doesn't seem all that likely for them to turn around. It's maybe a 99%er, as you would call it, for the Renegades.
Feels that way for sure. I mean, every single Phoenix is now exposed. These are the ones. I mean, these are the team comps that can make it happen, though, for Radiance. I do think that their Phoenix defense should be pretty good. Baba on Siege defense feels like she should be pretty solid. I mean, her one, depending on the shape that she gets, can easily get into the back line and poke someone without realizing it. This is Big Man's doing the exact right thing. Every time that your potion comes up when you're not in a team fight, you should pull one out and check if it's better than the one you have stored. And if it is, throw out the one you have stored and pocket the better one. And you just keep doing this over and over and over again until you find a really, really strong, a 3 red, 2 blue. Red and blue seem to be the best ones. Red gives you more damage. Blue gives you slow. The green is power reduction. Haven't really found that. I've felt that power reduction has been super strong, but it's one of those hidden things that you do end up finding to be pretty impactful when you look at the numbers. But I'm really looking, when I'm playing Baba, for multi-red potions, because if you get 3-4, you'll hit a backliner for like 800, 900 damage. It's nuts.
That's a nice double stun there on the Phoenix defense for Radiance. Renegades are going to look to make their way in. Still 5 members with that Fire Giant buff. SOT and Benji doing battle. Lanes don't matter for solo laners. They're still going to fight themselves on the front lines here. Only a little bit of damage really plugged down from this Phoenix. Could be tough for the Renegades to open this door. Benji, though, is going to move out. Maybe a touch too far. Lasbra in range. I think good being patient there with that Fear No Evil, holding on to it until a fight breaks out.
I don't think SOT and Lasbra have the damage to take down Benji, but he does have the damage to force back Tings and Cyclone. Jake channels that ultimate in the front line. Ven, I don't know how much value this Taiko Drums is going to get. This is looking good for Radiance.
Dazzling offensive over onto Venenu and a defensive Barracuda ultimate there to get himself out in the backline. SOT, though, still dueling in the front. Off to Niflheim, he goes. Barracuda taken low, adapting, unable to find the drop down, execute, but he moves forward and gets rid of Barracuda. Lasbra, though, has traded one back. Big man Tings finally knocks down SOT. This is the plight of the Ymir. He's slow and he's trying to get out of here. Nice four-man stun there, and actually maybe keeps him alive. Aurora's going to have to use the blink. Chases on. Eventually, Ymir will fall. A great defense given the game state here for Radiance.
Really, really good fight by Cyclone Spin in particular. I mean, he stays in perfect positioning the entire time. When your Hunter can get away with not using a single relic in a team fight, you know that they had a pretty good one, and he stayed super safe that entire time. As soon as Solar Ritual used that ultimate, he was about to transform. He doesn't have any CC immunity when he's about to transform. That doesn't count. So Cyclone immediately sends him on a first-class trip in through the realms and sets him up for an easy kill on landing. I think Cyclone was a real difference maker in that team fight. Aurora as well set up big man for a lot of solid poke. And now, I mean, I know it's a 13k lead, but getting close to full build here for Radiance. I do think Radiance's team fight, just by God alone, is better.
It's Fire Giant started up by them here. Awesome Jake is up, so on the right side of your screen may look even, but you're without Ymir for a little bit longer. Benji all by his lonesome in the front lines, and that's going to be Venenu taking him down for the opening kill here. Suddenly the Renegades are going to stomp on the gas, adapting. Anvil of Dawn is going to have to be defensive.
Yeah, just a big overextension there by Benji, and a bad one for bad timing for it to happen, because Radiance has to know that they're on a pretty strict schedule. They're on a clock on that Fire Giant pool, because Lasbra's coming back from base and he's going to have Fear No Evil, and that's going to turn the team fight pretty easily. So Radiance trying to rush it ends up with Benji in a bad spot, and it's an easy pick there for Renegades from great damage from Ven once again.
I was thinking there was a moment maybe Renegades weren't going to do the FG, but they were just kind of poking their heads around the corner to see if anyone from Radiance had the audacity maybe to step into this side of the jungle. It's about 5% HP now on the Fire Giant. Only Aurora really in range and won't be able to take that one away. SOT has taken a good bit of damage on the backside of this fight. Benji fully respawned. Maybe it's a go back and buy and then siege sort of situation here for the Renegades.
Very smart contest there from Radiance. Despite the fact they're down a lot, I still feel like they're in a pretty good position when it comes to team fights. That's a risky one, but you don't want to let Radiance, or Renegades rather, sit around and get the enhanced Fire Giant by letting them wait and hold it at 1 HP, because it was really, really close. I mean, they got it at 54, 29-54, somewhere around there. Really easy for them to sit on it for 6 seconds and get this massive buff. And instead, step up, force them to use their confirm early, but not to the point where we're going to lose lives for it and open up a easy Phoenix siege for them. So I like that call by Radiance to step up and at least force Renegades to kill it before they want to.
We have reached that point aggro. Big man Tings now topping the damage charts by about 5k. So we've reached that pivotal point, and maybe it had already been there for a couple of minutes now, where Big man Tings on some of these defenses is going to be able to help turn around some damage. And Cyclone Spin as well, for that matter. A tier 2 item, or maybe one final tier of an item away from fully completing that Heimdall build. Of course, Barracuda can't scoff at that Jingwei here in the late game. Lots of powerful forces going against one another on these sieges.
I think that Radiance did a pretty good job last time because Benji was able to handle the Solo Ritual push. I don't know why Solo is the one pushing mid, though. I think that they need him to engage on this left-hand side, and Lasbra should be able to be pretty favored in this 1v1 in mid should they try and 4-1 split.
Blinks in, Fear No Evil into the backline on Big Man Tings. Phoenix evaporates, but Lasbra, his health bar's low here as well. Up to the sky goes adapting, and Lasbra taken down in the back lines of this fight. Can you get adapting? No, but you can get Aurora in the meantime. Awesome Jake, he'll detonate the Radiance jungler. That's a dash away from Benji. 3 members left alive, and maybe these are the 3 you want. on the defensive end. A big fight here for Radiance.
But no Terra anymore, no Terra ultimate that's going to help turn the tides. Renegades trading 2 for 1, still get that Phoenix, and they still have Barra alive. I like their odds to end.
Ooh, stun. That's a stun over onto big man Tings. Aegis out the damage, but Venenu's there on the follow-up. Off to the side goes Cyclone Spin. Benji will get rid of the mid laner and SOT in the front line. He'll deal with the Amaterasu. Benji against the world, but Renegades don't care. In 33 minutes, Renegades, they're going to take game number 1.
Just love this look from Renegades. I love when I'm watching this team be proactive. I think that's one of their greatest strengths is this early game when they can get the ball rolling, and that's exactly what they did here. They take advantage of Radiance again, drafting for this late game. And if this was a, 6K deficit for Radiance at 25 minutes, I think Radiance likely win that game. I think their team fight was that good with that composition, but when you're talking 16, 17, 18K deficit, that's just too much to really fight against. And so now if you're Radiance, I think that you just have to be very focused on which lane am I leading on early game for adapting? Where are we getting our advantage? Because we need priority somewhere on the map. We can't afford to just wait until later because if Renegades are going to stick with this style, they're not going to let you get to later.
And I hope the Renegades do stick with this style. It's a breath of fresh air. The proactivity certainly big in grabbing the Renegades a win here in game number 1. Can Radiance bounce back in game 2? Well, that'll have to be discussed on the desk with Finch.
Thanks, Dolson. We'll be more than happy to break down that game for you, but I know that you all at home have a problem. You're looking shabby in your games, coming in with some of those pedestrian skins. Well, don't worry about it. Pick up this Final Boss Battle Pass, and you can finally step your game up so that you look good as much as you play good. Hopefully you all are out there playing well. My grammar aside, you want to make sure you grab this skin pack at Elder Jin, Baba Yaga, and Shadow Guan. You complete all of those levels and defeat the bosses. But now, Mifflin and I could talk a little bit about what happened there in that game. I mean, Agro described it as maybe a bit too late game of a composition for Radiance to be able to deal with Renegades, and I agree, man. I think that also Jake kind of ran the game for them on this Amir pick as well out of the jungle, too.
Potentially the best Ymir showing we've seen out of the SPL. Full stop. That was some really impressive wall placement from Jake. But saying that Radiance lost because their early game is too weak makes sense on a surface level. Baba Yaga has an incredibly weak early game, but with the bridge pickup Thor jungle, they should have been able to at least leverage something in the early, have some sort of setup with the Anvil of Dawn. But Adapting has potentially one of his worst showings this year. In the first 20 minutes, I'd say maybe he lands 3 ultimates, and every single time he dunks down, he misses it. Renegades immediately punish with a full 5-man rotation. You can't have that. Baba Yaga going no stacking items, she has a really good showing, BMT does, but he doesn't get any use out of his passive for the entirety of the game. Sure, he does a ton of damage, but sacrificing your late game so that you can mitigate some of your early game weakness when you're really not even making it to the late game very well might not be a great trade-off.
We saw it there in some of those replays of some Muir walls were scary. But I think that you're right to highlight those mid laners just now as you did. I do think that Big Man Tings eventually went on to have a pretty strong performance, but that early game felt pretty dominated to me by Venenu. His ability to rotate around the map alongside Laz, alongside Awesome Jake. You look a lot better when your facilitators are playing well. But I do think that in those first beginnings of the game, they got a bit more value out of Ven than Radiance did out of Big Man Tings here. And as you said, I think it's a little bit more about execution really than drafts. I don't necessarily think either team came in a position where they could not win this game because of the way the drafts went. It's just that Radiance couldn't quite execute. I mean, potentially the Thor adapting was a big part of that.
Yeah, Adapting just did not look comfortable on that Thor, which is not something you get to say about Adapt King's Thor that often.
No, you don't.
But there were some silver linings there. Radiance had Cyclone Spin perform incredibly well. BMT has a really good game. I think Cyclone ends that game 4-1 on Heimdall. No notes for the duo lane. Keep that up. But you're going to have to find some sort of leverage elsewhere on the map. Your mid laner getting blown out. Your solo laner getting blown out. Honestly, your support a little bit getting blown out. Cyclone was the only silver lining there. If you can get him Heimdall again, fantastic. But you got to find some aggression elsewhere if you want to get an early game lead.
Yeah, Cyclone Spin looks comfortable, and it's good to see him kind of getting back to that point where you can rely on him in the long lane, because for a little while, he felt a bit to me like a liability over there. He would get bullied out. If he was focused, they'd lose control of that whole left side of the map, and it really put them far behind. So it's good news that Cyclone Spin is back in the groove. And you mentioned Adapt King and Thor earlier. If Adapting wants to lock in Thor again this game, you won't hear me complaining, because I know that 9 times out of 10, he's going to have a monster performance on that pick, right? So I don't think that Radiance need to overreact too much to the way things went in that first game.
Fair enough. Maybe it's just me. I'm a very momentum-based player, at least when I used to play. So if I have one bad performance on a singular god, I will drop that god for a full month and a half at least. Maybe that's why Adapting has so much more success than me, that mental fortitude. So I guess when Adapting does say he can do something, you have no right to tell him no, but something will certainly need to change, if not in god pick, if not in playstyle, at least in execution, if Radiance want to at least not lose out as hard as they did early on in that last match.
Yeah, that game 1 wasn't enough, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about that. We just know that he could do better. So we're into those picks and bans now for game number 2. Radiance up 1-0. And remember how critically important these games are. Renegades fighting to try and keep themselves from falling down into the 7th and 8th position, where they could potentially not even be able to make it to those playoffs in between Phase 1 and Phase 2. And Radiance, who are 5th place right now, are trying to improve their standings, maybe make it a bit easier for them to potentially move throughout those playoffs. I believe if they were able to get the set win today, they'd make themselves a lock for qualifying in and everything too. So it's a pretty big deal for them if they're able to grab these wins.
Yeah, and if they can win out uncontested going forward, I think the most they can get is 3rd seed, which not that big of a deal. Mainly they're really keeping Renegades down if they win out here, which is fair. Renegades have looked like a really strong team, and if I'm going to playoffs, I don't want to play against them. Might as well win here in the online phase. But Renegades,
get them out.
Isn't that Hunbots? Yeah, you guys want to go to LAN? No, sir. But Lazarus picking up Hunbots. That's going to be one way in. It looked really good last game. Might as well do it again.
Right, he had a great game on it. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I had some reservations about Lasbra's normal playstyle and if this Unbots would fit into when I feel like we have the most success out of Lasbra. Well, he absolutely answered that, didn't he? He looked great on it and provided tons of control with them. But this time it'll be a bit different. The Camazot's picked up for Radiance. And I want to know your early impressions, because I think that could easily go to Benji or Adapting at this point.
I really do prefer Camazot's inside the solo lane. I think he brings so much dominance to that lane. He's able to sustain up. He's got damage potential. His rotations are really strong, and it'll open you up to having a more facilitator jungler, because already picking up Camazot's means that your team is going to be lacking a little bit on that CC front. It's much easier to have someone with a huge CC pool out of that jungle role so they can get involved early on in the team fights in the 3v3 in mid on duo lane ganks than it would be having it in your solo laner who has to rotate out around the 25-minute mark once he hits level 16, 17. So Camazot solo, that's where I'm willing to bet it's going.
Real quick, would you take Heimdall 6th overall? Would you be all right with that? Do you think that would fly in your house?
Well, hold on. Well, according to my watch here, it said that Cyclone was 4-1 last game, despite his whole team losing. Yeah, Heimdall is a pretty good pickup here. Kind of nuts that it makes it this far through, but I'll take it 100% of the time, especially considering what does Renegades get in trade? A Jing Shen and an Agni? I don't think either one of those picks even make my first top 10 in a draft phase.
Sure, if we were going purely off draft value, I don't think that was particularly a valuable exchange. But I do think that this is something that could work for Renegades, right? Venenu looks good on this Agni pick, and I do think that that sort of range initiation you can get, if you can get that out of your mid lane maids, a little bit of safely applied CC to start fights off, or potentially continue them, I think that gets undervalued a lot of the time.
He's also one of the best mages for applying Divine Ruin from a range. His passive is going to keep that ticking away on you. It's really easy to apply it, so Agni's going to be a very safe pick. And when you have safety, it means that Camazotz is going to have a much harder time diving you. It means that Terra won't be able to close the gap nearly as easily, so Agni could work out. Jing Shen meshes well with this comp. If you're worried about early auto-attack damage, as you should be against the Heimdall, Jing Shen is going to be able to mitigate that a lot and deal with some of that cleave auto-attack minion wave clear if he does go into the support role.
I am worried, though, Miff, that this might be a hard game for this Merlin. He doesn't have any of that CC immunity in his ult. He's so reliant on beads. And at this point, Renegades have picked 4 characters where I feel like I always need to be able to use my beads, to get away from the Sentinel of Zeus, to get away from Whirlwind of Rage and Steel and Fear No Evil and Noxious Fumes. How do you see Radiance navigating this control from Renegades?
they're going to want to start the fight themselves. If you allow Renegades to start off the initial engagement, you lost your beads. If you let them back up and start another engagement, well, you don't have beads. Radiance want to engage with this Thor ultimate. They want Heimdall setting up with his ultimate. If they can choose the fights, they can mitigate a lot of the strengths of Renegade's comp. Force Hunbots into using the ultimate defensively, do the same to Jingchen, then those tools don't become so crippling on their own terms. That said, Radiance's comp is a little bit lacking in engage. Yeah, you've got the Terra, but the only one following up off of that with any form of real CC should be this Thor. Thor will likely be the first one into a lot of the engagements for Radiance as well, and having him land first, not really ideal. He's looking at a distracted team trying to find multi-man dunks. If everyone's looking at you in the air, best case scenario, you get one.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder when everyone can see you coming. That did, though, seem to confuse Renegades, or not confuse them. They banned away a bunch of junglers in that second phase, so they knew that Camazotz was for Benji. Let's start up, though, with game number 2. It's Dolson and Aggro to bring us the call.
Well, in game 1, we figured, or we saw that the Renegades were able to really control that early game proactively there, Aggro. Do you think Radiance, though, it's a similar draft in the sense that they've got a Thor and a Heimdall, two absolutely pivotal picks there for them. Maybe a lot of that hinges around adapting here on this Thor to help control some of this early game a little bit better.
I think that Radiance is better equipped, if only because Renegades is better equipped to play passively in the early game. This draft from Renegades is significantly more passive than their last one. I mean, Nike in the solo lane, sure, she's a warrior, but she doesn't really bring that much pressure early on. You really are picking Nike for the later stages of the game when she's in the solo lane. In the early game, she can snowball leads. At this point, that doesn't really happen very effectively. The Xingqian instead of the Ymir, they do similar things, but Ymir just has a higher damage output, though, to be fair, there's really no Guardian that matches Ymir's damage output. I'm just a little bit concerned that Renegades are going to have a much harder time snowballing this game and really getting to a point where they can win as easily as they did last time.
Well, and one thing Finch was slightly concerned about, and I'll echo some of the concerns as well, is the bead burning potential that the Renegades do have up against Radiance. I mean, you look at so much of the lockdown, Jake showing a little bit of that here. Over in the long lane, Laswa rotating through. Cyclone's still somewhat healthy, so not sure where the kill potential is there, and they'll just plug away a little bit of extra damage. But Radiance have responded to that. 4 beads with only Benji opting into the blink to start things off here, so you're going to have a lot of beads to burn. You're going to have to do it often if you're the Renegades.
And this is exactly what Radiance did last game. Just buy beads on everybody, and then their CC won't be as potent. And it worked, kind of. Roar didn't get picked nearly as often as I think that he had potential to be, but still didn't end up making the difference. So I think that is something that Renegades are probably pretty okay with, understanding that even though we might not be as easy as we'd like, we have so many beads burners that one of them will still go through effectively.
I think one of the fun matchups to watch as well, you already highlighted the Nike in the solo lane. I mean, Camazotz shot out of a cannon at the beginning of this season of the SPL. I mean, it picked up or banned out in essentially every game, still relatively high in the ban column. I feel like when we have seen him, though, maybe more in that jungle role. In the small interaction we've seen already, though the sustain is high, so it wouldn't show for it just yet for Benji. But SOT has the damage to not only stay in this lane, but potentially force Benji back beneath his tower. It's going to be a fun solo lane to watch, especially when you looked at game 1 with how much jungle presence there was on this side of the map early on.
Solo Patrol is doing the right thing. You just ignore the Camazotz because you're never going to be able to kill him. He just has too much sustain. So Solo's really just focusing on pushing the wave as fast as he can, and let's rotate, let's be impactful. And Solo's played Nike a couple times. I think one time he went for the movement speed build, the tier-esque, Talaria into Winged Blade, into Relic Dagger, all this kind of stuff. I don't think we'll... And then the next game, he played it back-to-back games in a set. The next game, he went with a more traditional warrior build and was much more impactful. So if I had to guess, I would say that SOT is going to go for a pretty run-of-the-mill standard tanky solo laner build and not try and prioritize this movement speed that we see some other warriors go for.
Oh, and so much of the importance surrounding this Camazotz is kind of keeping it down. I mean, the snowball potential, even with just a couple of kills, 1 kill for that matter, under his belt, could spell doom depending on what you're able to do with that lead once rotation time comes. And with the blink as well for Benji, a little extra kill potential maybe to top that one off. You wonder if that maybe opens up the mindset for adapting to try to find some earlier ganks over here on SOT.
Especially with this Talaria build that he does go for. I mean, no defense for him, just a lot of movement speed and a blink for him as well. So matching that of Benji, though Benji goes for the more power build with the Warrior Tabi, which makes sense. Kamizatsu is a little bit less about utility, and by a little bit I mean a lot less utility and a lot more just raw damage output that you have to respect. I think it's a tough matchup for Agni, man. I mean, that dash does not get you far enough away from Bat Out of Hell to save your life pretty much ever. Yep. So that's I'm worried a little bit for Ven in this one on a god that scales. It takes longer to get into the late game than the Raijin did. I think that Raijin ban by Radiance was very smart because if Big Man wants to play these later game mages, got to get there, and Raijin just makes it pretty hard to do so.
I feel like, specifically looking at Ven, it's been a lot of fun to watch him as well, kind of the diversity in god pool that he's had. I mean, one of the few guys really to lean into this Agni, Nuwa there for him for a while. I mean, Hurrywind, we saw him yesterday with the Giannis, kind of the first one to bring Baba out. Of course, first time really she was available. But Venenu, absolutely in that category where sometimes just playing a god that's not often played against can throw the enemy team through a ringer.
Definitely. I mean, he played Chang'e mid a little
bit.
Right. I mean, that's weird. No one else is doing that pretty much ever. So that is it certainly speaks to his willingness to try different gods and come with a different look. And I do think that, you know, against Agni, these guys have been playing against Agni since the day they picked up SMITE. I mean, he's been around for so long that it is a little bit harder to catch people off guard with an alpha god, but you still might forget exactly how much damage he's going to put out. You know, how much am I going to take from double bombing here, or if I get triple bombed, am I dead? Things like that can be kind of difficult to remember exactly where you are and how much damage you're going to take from those. So I do think that there is some value, even if you are picking one of the oldest gods in the entire game.
Sometimes it's just that competitive comfortability maybe that you might not have on a day-in, day-out basis up against Venenu here. Small invade there for Benji, moving over to the Harpy side of the map. He's going to get SOT taken down quite low, actually. Behind the blue buff goes SOT, has to drop the Sentinel of Zeus. I think Benji smartly does not want to take this fight any further, but that opens up the door to a little bit of proxy farming here as Lasbra might rotate over. Has Fear No Evil, but SOT maybe not as much. Cyclone taken low. Barracuda only needs one more shot. Sparks flying everywhere, and Adapting will fall down. Barracuda dies for the first death in the game. Adapting will open things up here. Benji continued his presence over on this blue buff side, but opposite side to the map, aggro, seeing some action, but it's Radiance who will open things up in the long lane.
Man, Cyclone just sets Barra up for the easiest gank of Adapting's career. I mean, no beads, 1 HP. It wouldn't have mattered if Barra had read the ult and channeled his airstrike in time. He would have died to the landing damage either way. That's just really, really smart by Cyclone. Make sure that he keeps Barra on the line, make sure that he's stepped up and out of position, and Barra nearly finds that solo kill. I mean, I think Barra played it well, but Cyclone clearly knew that he had help coming the entire time.
And in the moment that Cyclone backs up, I think Barracuda's maybe realizing that he's not long for this world. That opens up a bit of a door here for Radiance. It's a 1-level discrepancy now, but Lasbra just a moment ago, 2 levels behind already Adapting, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. Lasbra, though, could pull back a little bit. Cyclone's been properly using the Bifrost to escape his way on back. Lasbra didn't have Fear No Evil anyway, so maybe kill potential wasn't all that high, and there was a beads for Cyclone as well. But exactly the change, aggro, I think we wanted to see from Radiance, get things going a little bit earlier.
Just really smart again by Cyclone, knowing that his 2 was knock-up immune during the channel, and you can teleport in the midst of that. Barra still wanting to go aggressive, realizing that maybe we don't have a whole lot of kill potential over here. Jake doing a lot less damage on the Xingqian than he was on that Ymir.
Vera is maybe looking worse for wear than the Radiance counterparts there in the long lane, though relatively even when it's all said and done. Some of the wards, though, just now timing out. I was going to make a point that, you know, Radiance, through some of that aggression, had found themselves a bit deeper ward coverage. Maybe for a red buff invade here at some point. And I think it's going to be important as well for the Renegades to kind of mitigate as much of that pressure as possible. The mid lane being one of those big spots. Venenu's going to dash his way out. Adapting, though, wants to follow up. Radiance collapsing here on the red buff side. Adapting nearly goes down, but the Thor gets the kill nonetheless. Jake will blink on through, trade out. 1-for-1 trade as we stand. Barracuda not rotating. Lasbra held relatively far back as well. Hesitating to see if Lasbra would go back in. Jake continuing the chase here. Fear No Evil's going to connect onto BMT, who flickers his way off into the backside. Jake taken low here. I'm not sure they're on the same line of communication here. Lasbra doesn't seem like he wanted to go back in. Jake's going to get out alive. Actually, SOT moves back through as well. Sentinel and Zeus locked down. Big man Tings underneath the tier 1 tower. Maybe they are on the exact same page. It's awesome Jake who keeps Radiance in the fight just a little bit too long.
A beautiful rotation over from Solo or Troll, and that's the Jake special, man. I mean, keeping you think that, what is this guy doing? It's an easy kill. We get to get a lead because of that. You wouldn't be the first, Dave, and you won't be the last. That's for sure. That's what Jake does to everyone he plays against, pretty much. He's the master of the Jedi mind trick, and right there keeps everyone up from Radiance focused on him, allows SOT to rotate over. But I think that a lot of credit in that fight needs to go to both Adapting and Ven, because Adapting, perfect wall, cuts off the escape path for Ven, but Ven holds his dash, dashes away the only way that he can, and then if Adapting's going to hammer in and use the beads, he's going to kill me. There's nothing I can do, but Ven does his job, which is get all of his damage off and set up in an easy return kill.
Oh, Lasbra melted by Adapting. That's a 2-level, at the time, 2-kill differential there in the jungle. Perfect execution from Adapting. Lasbra touch over extended, wanted to farm those the Harpies there on the Renegades, or the Radiant side of the map rather, and that's going to open things up aggro for a Pyromancer here from Radiance, taken down to half HP, and Renegades not in range. Some free map pressure, some free gold over to Radiance.
I think this now the jungle roles are reversed. I mean, game 1 it was Lasbra who had a huge lead on Adapting. Now Adapting with a substantial lead over this Hun Bats, and I'm just surprised at how heavily Renegades are valuing this Hun Bats. I think that, again, I want to see them lean into this aggressive early game team sort of mentality. You know, why can't they play a lot like Ghost, where Ghost likes to get really aggressive early on and set their jungler up for kills early? I don't know. This Hun Bat's first pick, I just don't know if he really warrants it.
Jake has to blink away defensively this time. The bait and switch wasn't going to work that deep in the Radiant side of the jungle. But I still think it's good from the Renegades. I mean, we are even here at about 12 minutes in, despite the kills maybe not telling that exact story. I think all has been kind of quiet in that solo lane front. There have been some fights taken over on that right-hand side of the map, though. Benji with an assist, SOT, of course, with the rotation through, finding that kill in the mid lane. Do you think these teams have done enough? And might have to ask you that question in a second. Is awesome. Jake will be slammed down on by Adapting. 4 kills for Radiance, 4 kills for this Thor. So the onslaught continues from Radiance here in the jungle. Do you think the pressure on the solo lane, though, Aggro, has been about what you expect here about 13 minutes in?
Yeah, I don't think that either of these characters have a whole lot of solo potential against one another even more, or anymore. I mean, in the early game, Kamazoth does so much damage, maybe you can kill through Nike Shield, but now that SOT has the Glad Shield and this Hide of the Urchin, which tells me that he wants to group up earlier than most other solo laners would, I just don't think that there's anything that you can really do to pressure out that solo lane anymore. Spending your time in mid and trying to pick the support is better, especially when the support has gone for the build that Jake has gone for. My man's got 0 prots up until he bought that Iron Mail. So he's got, what, 10? I think that's 75 health, 10 physical protection on that Iron Mail. That's it in terms of itemization that he's got, protections from itemization, because he's picked up this Messenger's Mask. It's movement speed is the name of the game. Jake and Solo Patrol are the innovators behind everyone's least favorite tier build that's getting nerfed next patch. He's fast, but there's so much CC on Radiance. I don't know that speed is really what Jake was lacking up until this point. He's awfully squishy.
That's an ultimate connecting here from Cyclone Spin onto Lasbra. Couldn't have come a moment sooner. Adapting here to play, though. 4 kills on this Thor. Beads used, but damage not through. Barracuda airstrikes down over onto Adapting. There's a bait and switch for the Renegades. It finally gets rid of that Thor for the next 30 seconds.
I mean, Adapting, if he lands that ultimate, Lasbra insta-dies because Cyclone had the sword hovering in the air. It was going to come crashing down onto him. But inaccurate with the Anvil of Dawn and then the chase after the fact. Lasbra does it perfectly. I mean, you jump, you see if he's willing to all-in commit to you, and as soon as Adapting goes all the way in, you're not running anymore. I think that it's a mistake I see a lot of players make where they don't just accept their fate and turn and put out their damage to try and set up kills on the other side, and it ends up being the difference maker and Lasbra staying alive because they burn through Adapting's health bar before Lasbra ends up dying.
There's a rotation there in the mid lane. Quick synopsis there. Big man Tings burns both of his actives. We'll have to see if that bites the Merwin at some point here. Renegades, though, despite being under pressure from Radiance, it's really been a lot of adapting, but it hasn't really made Awesome Jake shy away from trying to open these doors. SOT just now rotating over as well. Talaria Boots, as you pointed out earlier in the game, going to make him a little bit quicker there out of that solo lane. It's been kind of this 1-2 punch, whether it's Jake and Ven or Jake and SOT. The beads burning potential continues. That's going to be a toss back onto Adapting. No beads for that Thor here. Venenu's going to take him low. There is an Aegis though, and that'll save Adapting's life for the moment. You just cannot get away from Jake here if you're hovering anywhere by this mid lane.
No, you got too much movement speed for the boy. He's too quick in order to run away from. A little bit of miscommunication though. If he tosses Adapting towards Ven wasn't in mid lane, he was in the jungle coming from top right. If you toss him into that wall, it's an easy CC chain there for Ven, and you're going to be able to burn Adapting easily, but a wrong decision from Jake on where Adapting should be tossed, and as a result, you still get the Aegis, but don't get the kill that you were really banking on.
I'd hesitate to call it quiet here 60 minutes in this game. Both teams kind of poking and prodding. I think a similar vibe maybe aggro for the Renegades here from game number 1. They're still searching for some of that proactivity, kind of been the buzzword for the Renegades in this set. But Radiance as well. It seems, I don't really want to say refound their identity, but they've certainly started to try to assert some pressure over onto the Renegades as well, and they've made some big plays happen. But all of that pressure now maybe falls on Adapting with these 4 kills. He's got to pull extra weight where the rest of his team is just sitting on assists.
And now that lead that he had is gone. I mean, Lasbra's been able to catch up off of those 2 deaths for Adapting, which is pretty key that Lasbra's back in this game. And he's through the weakest part of Hunbat's game, which is extra weak now because of that CDR nerf, or that cooldown nerf to Fear No Evil. Now Lasbra's at 40% CDR, so that cooldown nerf isn't going to be felt anymore. He's maxed out. So he's still going to be able to drop that ultimate over and over and over again and be really impactful with it. So I think that, frankly, Renegades are in a pretty good spot. I still think Radiance has a strong team fighting composition just because anytime that you have a Terra, your team fight's okay. But it's not as good as it was before.
Watch out. Here comes Adapting. Connects onto Venenu. Benji is here, bat out of hell, waiting for that Aegis to wear off. There is a Fear No Evil. Benji does finally finish off the kill onto Venenu. Washing Machine will toss back a couple, and Awesome Jake sets up the kill here for the Renegade. Suddenly chases on. Radiance full-on retreat mode. Aurora slight body blocks with Jake, but the Root will effectively disengage this fight. Final flicker for Big Man Ting. Sees to it that that's the case. 1 for 1. Adapting, Venenu both go down.
That time, I think it's just a pathing mistake there from Venenu to come high into the mid lane. At 18 minutes, there's just so much damage on the map that's such a risky path no matter what. And it ends up paying off, at least that they get the 1 for 1.
This Pyromancer started, but now the fight is a touch more important here for both of these teams. 4 members of Radiance still alive, 4 members of the Renegades as well, nearly identical on the death timers. So reinforcements will be close from either side. Pyromancer pulled off, though. SOT finds his way over onto Cyclone Spin. Big Man Tings is there as well. Both of the backliners suddenly see a Nike running at them and have to roundabout retreat on either side of that Harpy Pit. Sentinel of Zeus was used, and the disengage is in.
Really good space created there by Solo Retrol, who's really having a very good game so far on this Nike. I think that he's been impactful on his rotations and in these team fights, despite... I'm definitely a believer in the Nike jungle. Still not super sold on Nike solo. Think it might take a little bit too long, and you really don't get that same level of effectiveness as having this threat of damage that Nike jungle has. But maybe SOT's converting me, man. He's playing really well on it so far. He's created enough space, been a disruptive factor, despite the low player damage really across the board. By the way, take a look at these charts. Jake, top player damage. That's why we built Messenger's Mask, baby. We're getting that movement speed and that CDR, and we're a little bit of power, and he's putting it to good use. Not a lot of player damage for Renegades, really across the whole team, though.
Relic Dagger Messenger's Mask coming to a ranked game near you is all I hear, and that's all I hear in that statement, Agra. Maybe I'll have to.
Might be skipping a queue or two tonight, Dave. I'm busy all of a sudden. I've got stuff to do.
Yeah, we got some SPL to work on anyway. Maybe it'll wear off by the time this one's over. Jake certainly making it work. Adapting, been the name in our mouths about Radiance, and for good reason. But look at kind of the shift there. Started off really uncontested, has since fallen 3 times. Hasn't been able to add to that kill total. Only 1 added to the assist column here for the jungler. So if nothing else, Renegades have done a good job of kind of playing around that. Beads all still available for the Renegades, and all still available for Radiance here. So you're coming into this next fight, presumably around this Oni Fury, fully stocked up.
And these fights are where Heimdall just is so valuable because he's playing with perfect information every time. Someone flanking around the back of Gold Fury, I know about it. Someone standing behind that wall, he knows about it. It's really hard to sneak up on him.
Watch out, Roar takes a little bit of chunk damage there on the front line. Jungler rotating around, or Benji is rather. Awesome Jake isn't going to have time to fight here, adapting. Hears me speak his name and adds the 5th kill of the game on this Thor. Lasbra has to retreat, has the Fear No Evil, but it's Radiance now with the 1-man advantage.
Ben still trying to do this red buff, knowing that Benji is right there, and he gets it with that bomb, but Benji's really just here to keep everybody out because the rest of his boys are on this Gold Fury.
SOT is close by. Steel could be there. Sentinel of Zeus available should he choose to use it. I think smartly pulled off there by Radiance. The min-max there of that moment played to a T. Let's force out Solo or Troll, and once he is gone, we'll take the Oni Fury for ourselves.
And you see the problems that this 5 beads pickup for Radiance is really causing Renegades. Yes, they've got beads burners, but someone's got to go in order to get those beads, and Jake tries to do so, and he gets insta-killed by this Merlin. He had no magic D before that fight whatsoever, and Big Man just eats him alive pretty easily. Now he's working towards a Kusari, but at the time he didn't have any extra magical protection, so I think that Radiance, and really, frankly, they only lose 1 set of beads anyways. Adapting's the only one who used it, so if Jake's going to go in, you've got to be able to find multiple. You've got to be able to get multiple sets. Otherwise, it's just too hard to find the initiation after the fact. Even if Lasbra blink ults the guy you got beads from, everyone else around him's going to beads and kill the Hunbats before Lasbra can get his damage off.
Well, the 1 set of beads that Jake was able to get from Cyclone Spin doesn't quite add up maybe to that metric, but it is going to leave Cyclone a touch more vulnerable here. Rotation from Radiance, maybe over to this Pyromancer side. The line has been drawn by Radiance here, but SOT is looking to break it down. Pyromancer started half HP. Good double stun there by Venenu, and no troubles for Radiance in locking down that objective. Aurora, though, on retreat as Cyclone, or SOT rather, has made his way into the front line. That's the leap down onto Benji. There is Bat out of hell, so not under any real danger. It's the Pyromancer, and 1 more disengage for Radiance.
Radiance just has so much priority on the map because of this teamfight presence that they have, and because, again, Cyclone's playing with perfect information every time. It's so easy for Heimdall around these objectives to just make it really easy for his whole team. It's why Radiance feels comfortable with just a 2k lead pulling FG.
SOT, the only one immediately in range. He'll jump down and will chug some good damage over onto Cyclone Spin, but big man Tings is going to separate this fight. SOT right back in. Big man Tings will pull back that Nike. It looks like the Renegades are the ones looking for this fight, maybe because Lasbra is going to find a big Fear No Evil. Adapting will drop down, won't stun anyone with that one. SOT is going to chug down some good damage over onto big man Tings. Awesome Jake dodges out that wall, and Benji being bullied in the corner now by the Renegades. Finally, Adapting has gone down. Venenu will be able to dash away. Benji unable to get the kill here with all of the map presence that Radiance has had up to this point. Oh, the fadeaway! You can't stand there, Venenu. Maybe Lasbra pulls back the final kill. It's a 2-for-1 trade. Venenu, the sacrificial lamb. Renegades keep the Fire Giant alive.
Now Tings looking for Jake. No jump for Jake anymore, but SOT up and over the top. Barra looking to bite off a little bit of this fight. Dashing in. He's still got Relics and all.
Airstrike up. Where does he swoop down? Beneath this tower here goes Barracuda. Big man Ting, Cyclone Spin. Both quite squishy, both quite low. Awesome Jake gets tossed into the nether. Big man Tings is going to be able to turn around some damage, and Cyclone Spin will finally finish off the Renegade support. Maybe you've extended a touch too far. Barracuda could pull back this tier 2 tower. It's really SOT who still has that Sentinel of Zeus, maybe turning things around here. Big man Tings with the Aegis. Barracuda with the re-engage. Messy, back and forth here, aggro, and might stand even when it all settles.
Dave, take a rest, my guy. That fight went for 3 minutes, it felt like. It spanned the whole map. We learned a lot about each other and everything in the world around us during that lengthy engagement. And that's exactly the type of fight the Renegades want to take, man, because they just have this scrappy mentality. This fight's still going, but I'm done talking about it because Adapting's picked off Solo Retrol because SOT finds the lazy back. But man, it's just all over the place, and that sort of uncoordinated, spread out, messy team fight, I think favors Renegades way more than Radiance, because Radiance has this presence, this AoE presence from Terra. They've got this CC that isn't as widespread as Renegades. If you break up Renegades into 3 groups, that anyone in those 3 groups is still going to have CC, and they're going to have more CC than Radiance has. And so if Radiance split up, you might have Benji with Tings, and they don't have a whole lot of guaranteed CC, and it's pretty easy to just gun them down, whereas that doesn't really happen with Renegades. They've always got crowd control, no matter how spread out they get. And I think that Radiance needs to realize that they need to stay grouped, not so grouped they're getting multi-man Fear No Evil, but grouped enough that they can help the ones who are.
We've seen these moments where Benji has found his way towards the back line, but almost nearly full defensive build there in the solo lane for this Camazotz, so maybe not the same amount of kill pressure as like a full-blown hybrid build would look for him. Still has it, of course, but Spectral Armor rounding out a little bit of extra defense up against Barracuda might make things a little bit more difficult for Benji to kind of secure some of these backline kills.
Renegades are kind of in a position now where they still feel like they want to take advantage of Relics being down, but there aren't a whole lot of Relics down on the other side. It's just the Aegis there for Big Man. That's not really what your composition's going to prey upon. You're going to prey upon beads being down, not necessarily the Aegis. So I think it's a good call by Renegades. See if Radiance is paying attention, see if they notice you on fire, and as soon as they do, back up.
Benji will poke a little bit over onto Awesome Jake. This is exactly the lineup we've seen here from the Renegades. SOT kind of locking down one side, Jake sprinting at a couple members of Radiance on the other. It's really been kind of that return engagement from Radiance that has kept them in a lot of these fights. Fire Giant still a couple minutes away from turning into that enhanced variety, so that'll become a lot more difficult. You wonder if either of these teams, aggro, maybe feel a touch more pressure to start it up before the transformation.
Could be, because you really have to win a team fight much more convincingly once that does become enhanced, but I don't think any team's going to be able to get a huge advantage in the next 2 minutes unless someone oversteps pretty drastically. By the way, speaking of drastic, look at the drastic difference between Venenu in Game 1 on the Raijin and what he's been able to do on this Agni so far. He was hard carrying a lot of fights for Renegades in Game 1, and now he's bottomed the entire game in player damage.
I was looking for him.
Pretty different.
Well, SOT is going to start off this engagement, and who else is with them but Awesome Jake. Now you kind of left your backliners out to dry here, but really that's the case for both teams. Adapting pulls back defensively. Lasbra, Fear No Evil, gets dropped down by Adapting. Cyclone Spin has found a couple big chunky autos there to help open up this fight for Radiance. Aurora will be knocked up off to the side. Adapting wants to keep things going here. Awesome Jake walled off, but that doesn't stop the jump from finding its way over. Benji now maybe moving back. Be careful, Aurora. Barracuda certainly at a point where he can find some good damage. Radiance, they grab a kill, but they lose some health in the meantime.
Barra is having a great fight. He's putting out a ton of damage, needs some help, and there it is, a stun from Ben. Almost sets up BMT. Finally, SOT finishes him off, but here comes Renegades.
That's a swoop down off of the airstrike for Barracuda. Adapting is able to grab the kill. Finally, Venenu on the board. That's the first kill of the game for this Agni. Now we can take a breath. Double kills, really, for both sides here. Fire Giant 30 seconds away from that transformation. Lasbra up in 3 seconds. If nothing else, though, this will buy the Renegades maybe some vision control on the Radiant side of the map.
And that this buys them a much easier next engagement, but they can't wait too long. As soon as these blinks are up, and it's risky business, man. I mean, you're going to fight with Barra having no relics at all. That's going to be scary because he's really done so much heavy lifting when it comes to your damage with where Ven is on the player damage charts. The reason the Renegades are in these fights is because Barra's putting out the difference a lot of times, but it's just more damage for Radiance. I mean, you look at what Tings is putting out. He's done a ton of player damage, way more than anybody else in the game.
2.5.
And Cyclone is matching what Barra's putting out. So that means that there's a massive damage discrepancy in this game, which means that now we have to really take advantage of relics being down, because if we're not going to do as much damage, we at least have to be on the same page.
Well, Jake wants to keep going, so does Lasbra. Big man Tings through the clean cycle, and he'll go down to the hands of Jake. Adapting, though, will trade back. 1-for-1 kills here. Benji still on the front line. Double stun from Adapting on the back end of a big Anvil of Dawn. Jake stun down. Cyclone Spin thanks him for it. 2-for-1 trade, and Radiance not on the chase just yet.
So if all of our damage is coming from Barracuda, maybe we don't fight without him, fellas? I mean, they go for this initiation. I know that Tings doesn't have relics at the time, but he's not going to have relics for a while with how that fight was looking to break out. I mean, I think it's just a lack of patience there by Renegades caused them to lose 2 members. And again, I think we're seeing how hard it is to dime this Hive Doll effectively. Lasbra has gotten exploded by Cyclone Spin both of the last times that he's blinked into the back line.
Well, that's kind of been like this binary yes or no, hasn't it been, with Jake, where yes, sometimes sprinting at the enemy team will work, and then every once in a while it just kind of blows up in your face, and that's not, you know, a devastating loss there for the Renegades, but it's certainly more of the latter, a bit of a disjointed fight, and you know that tends to happen with kind of this throw it all to the wind and look for these aggressive engage play styles. Again, in the grand scheme of things, won't change all that much, except maybe vision control now shifts over in favor of Radiance. The Oni Fury has respawned, and it's going to be Adapting. Looking for some peel here. Barracuda does have beads, will have to use them, but he's half HP now. Radiance takes down the Oni Fury. Big Fear No Evil from Lasbra, but not enough damage follow-up from the rest of the Renegades. Radiance, I think they're going to take the Oni Fury and get themselves out.
That's exactly what Renegades should be doing, though. Take this trade and get out and set yourself up for the next engagement. Benji's got ult, so I don't think he's going to die here, but with this swoop, he decides to go in and try and get the kill. Maybe he was going to die with that position either way. That's a couple times now today that Benji has put himself in a bad spot. And this is exactly what Renegade's composition wants to do. Who cares about that Oni Fury, man? Not Renegades. They got 3 sets of beads off of 1 Fear No Evil from Lasbra. And that is all that matters that happened in that engagement. As long as Renegades are able to step up and punish accordingly. I mean, Ven had to reset. We had to reset a little bit. That's fine. This should be a fire pull by Renegades, 100%. If you can't leverage this advantage, then you're not going to be able to leverage any of them. You've got 3 people who are insta-dead to you going on them.
4 out of 5 ultimates ready to go as well. Awesome Jake used the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel just now. In on the back line, didn't result in any opening engagements, though. Aurora hovering close by. Watch out for Adapting. Where does this Anvil of Dawn go? Well, right down onto Barracuda. The Jing Wei deleted from the game. Adapting, though, takes a return death. 1-for-1 trade jungler for AD carry. They listen to you. They start up that FG. But suddenly this Thor, just a little bit too potent, and dropping down onto your AD carry. Lasbra may end up falling here as well, and looks like Cyclone Spin is going to be the one who ends up benefiting.
Yeah, that's an easy one, and that's what makes this. I mean, Cyclone has no beads against most hunters in the game. Look at what happened to Barra. He had no beads, gets one shot by the assassin. Cyclone gets to play with perfect information. You can't blink on him without him knowing you're there because of his one, and so it's so easy for him to position without dying in these team fights. And he just sits back with his one up and doesn't move until it's up again. And we just repeat that process over and over and over again until we know that the fight is won. They can't peel away adapting once he gets on top of Barra, and without beads, Barra's dead to rights.
If Ananu has to dash away, he won't be dead to rights here. A roar quite low. That's a whirlwind of Rage and Steel that will connect for a couple. A double stun there from SOT on the leap, and the kill is in on a Cyclone Spin. Remember, Aggro, this is a 3v4 fight that the Renegades are taking here, and somehow Radiance are really on the back foot of it, evened things up 3 for 3, or 3 versus 3 rather, on this side of the map. That's a big opening pick for the Renegades, stalling out what could have been a big Fire Giant.
I mean, Radiance don't just focus the objective, and that's going to be a hard objective to focus. I mean, you've got a lot of AoE that's going to come down on you between the Fire Giant and the Agni and the CC coming from the Xing Chen and the Nike. But I think that the Radiance really don't just pull in the trap a little bit deeper. And Jake, with all the CDR that he has between the boots and the mantle and the Relic Dagger and the Messenger's Mask, gets his ultimate up right on time to punish Cyclone, whose beads were just about to come up.
That's a good wall onto Jake, will result in about half of his HP. SOT is just going to bully Benji back, and it will force the Bat Out of Hell here. SOT will just catch a little bit of damage from adapting really on the back end of that fight. So Bat Out of Hell now down. All 5 ultimates ready to go here for the Renegades. Aurora waiting on the ultimate to come back online as well. The big kind of economic look, I suppose, maybe not the right word, but it's really been that beads inventory that we've tried to focus on, and Radiance has them all coming into this next FG fight.
And that makes me feel like they're in a great spot to win this next FG fight. And I think that they should feel that way as well. They don't really have a great split pusher. I mean, no teleport for either side, so that kind of lends itself to this 5-on-5 death ball that we've seen around this Fire Giant that's lasted at least 10 minutes. Think that Renegades, anytime that all of Radiance has beads up, have to be really nervous about how that fight's going to go. Now, Cyclone has no Aegis for another minute plus. And that's a pretty big deal, but again, how is Lasbra supposed to close that gap and be the initiator onto him? You've got to fight the rest of the team first before you can make your way to that Heimdall.
Well, despite it being a 4K gold lead for Radiance, you can kind of swipe that one by the side outside of some consumables and maybe selling off the boots. We are all even here, and now, just now, Jake also reach level 20, so XP also doesn't matter here at this point in the game. Whose game plan do you think is executed better here to get us to a point of late game potential? And good hover by Doug is going to force Barracuda back, but who do you think maybe is happier to have found themselves equal at 37 minutes?
I think both teams probably feel like they're in a pretty good spot because they both have good team fighting presence, but overall I think it's Radiance to be even at this point with all your beads up. It's pretty binary for me. If all our beads are up, I like Radiance's chances. If they're down, I love Renegade's chances.
Beads good, no beads bad. Benji is going to have to take some damage here. Fear No Evil only on to Big Man Tings and does not force out the beads. That's a big pivot here. Lasbra, see you later. Benji will swoop through, grab the kill there. SOT, Sentinel of Zeus, and the follow-up leap will grab a kill, but it's a double kill for the Kamazots now on the rotation through. Aurora will blink in, but it's a stun from Ven to keep this fight peeled out. Big Man Tings just want to fight elsewhere on the map. Barracuda, how often are we seeing him in these positions? This time, though, Aegis, beads, both used, and that's going to be the FG started up.
I mean, that one's pretty easy to break down here, Dave. Lasbra finds zilch with his ultimate. Doesn't do anything with Blink, Fear No Evil. And then jumps, knowing that adapting is in the sky. A series of bad decisions by Lasbra. Ven's done it before on Fire Giant Heroics, but this time Radiance a little bit too quick. I think he just caught Aurora's dash, though. Barra's here in tow, but no front line means that this is not a fight the Renegades should be looking to take. I mean, really, that one's easy. Lasbra gets insta-killed, gets no value out of anything, and from there it's an easy fight for Radiance.
It's been the tale of two games for really both of these junglers, hasn't it? Where now Lasbra's kind of looked, at least slash line-wise, how adapting was here in game number 1. Adapting, going back to that Thor, I think smartly, and they mentioned it on the desk, not shying away from it just because it doesn't work out in game number 1. Not going to go with the Mifflin approach of tossing it out when it doesn't work out for you in one of these games. But now you have to look at kind of the map pressure aggro. There's 4 members with the enhanced Fire Giant buff on themselves. Long lane Phoenix is open. A couple tier 2 towers are standing there as well. But you also have to look at the the Renegades defense rather, and how confident they might be in defending these Phoenixes.
Yeah, I think that it's really just been so sloppy from both sides. You feel like if Radiance don't clean it up, even though they've got enhanced Fire Giant and they're going to be sieging, the Renegades have an easy opportunity to turn it around. It's just been really, really rough, I think, for both of these sides to find clean engagements. I think Agni is pretty decent on the siege defense. It's pretty easy to stun out the back line from a pretty safe distance and still find some good damage on the front line after the fact. If Lasbra hits the Fear No Evil, it's difficult to deal with for frontliners, though they've got beads, so it's a lot easier than it normally is. I think Renegades were kind of banking on the fact that no way Benji and Aurora get beads against us, right? I mean, we can pick one of them for free every time, right? Just hasn't been the case.
In our minds, there's no way we're going into this Phoenix Siege with all of the relics available for Radiance, but here we are. Aurora wants to get things started, might try to end this game here, adapting. He'll find Venenu in the backline. Fear No Evil used defensively from Lasbra, but it defends nothing. Venenu goes down. Nonetheless, left side Phoenix
sick.
will burn away. Barracuda also down. Mid laner, Carry, both gone here from the Renegades. Radiance could push this fight. They might be able to take the game with just a couple more kills. Aurora trying to sidestep his way over. Benji will leap back through as well. Watch out, though. Cyclone Spin has made his way back onto the Titan. SOT will turn around to Roar in tow, though. No minions left just yet. That's the knockback end, the ultimate. Radiance, they're going to turn their eyes towards the Titan. Lasbra's back in the fight, though. The Titan just a little bit too low, and Radiance, they're going to send us to a game number 3.
Man, Cyclone just really put in a lot of work. That last team fight was beautiful from Benji and adapting in sync, on the same page, diving Ven, easy kill, because that's what Agni is in the late game oftentimes, an easy kill if you can close that gap. And then the freehand double tap on Barracuda to insta-kill him off the poke that Cyclone and Aurora and Big Man had done to him. It was really, really impressive there from adapting in that last fight. I think you called it, Dave. It's been a tale of two junglers. Lasbra very effective in game 1, adapting anything but. The script gets flipped. Adapting had a bit of a dead zone in the middle there. Got off to a great start, fell off pretty hard, but ultimately heavily outplayed Lasbra come late game.
And as such, Radiance were able to find their way into that back line a little bit more consistently. I mean, the last fight is perfect. Let's get rid of the mid laner and the carry first off, and then we can clean up the rest of the fight elsewhere. Radiance have come back here in game 2 and forced us into a game 3. Before that, though, we'll go back to Finch to break this one down.
Thanks, Dave. That game was fun for Radiance, but maybe terrifying for Renegades. And if you want to enjoy something at home that is both fun and terrifying, then pick up this new World Kitty Jormungandr skin. I somehow both didn't know that I needed this and maybe don't ever want to have to see it. I don't know where I come down on this one, but you certainly want to pick this skin up. Hard to have more fun when you're using the big snake than with this skin. Myth, you and I were talking, though, amongst ourselves, kind of about where things went wrong here in this game for Renegades. We're having trouble landing on the exact precise reason, and I think that's because there are a lot of issues for Renegades here in this game. What did you see? What helped Radiance tie this set up?
I really saw that it was a race for backline dive. Every single time we see Lasbra trying to make his way into the backline, SOT doing the same, and they just got out outpaced by Adapting and Benji. Every single time Adapting goes up, he gets a kill. He finds Barracuda in the back with his beads down. Barracuda dies. But the same can't be said for the dive of Renegades. Every time they move back, they have to contend with Cyclone Spin, using his vision to make sure that he's got, as Aggro likes to say, perfect information, knowing that everything's coming his way, CC immunity on his ultimate. They played a lot safer, Radiance did. And then when they chose to dive, they did so much. I think Aggro highlighted it as well during that set, that it seemed like a lot was on Jake's plate. It might have seemed that way because Jake was doing just that, literally everything for his team. He was the engage, he was the dive, he was doing it all, and the rest of his team was kind of falling by the wayside, not really getting huge value. Even Ven, who had a really good showing in this Agni, got incredibly outscaled by Merlin come late game.
That's a great point. I mean, he was, what, nearly 10, 12,000 before that last team fight? That much damage behind, so I assume it was even more so by the time the game ended. There were just a lot of individual mistakes, right? I mean, there was that fight on the Fire Giant where Barracuda didn't have beads, and he ends up dying the second that he gets dunked on by Adapting. Great recognition by them to find that target. What about in that last big Fire Giant fight where Lasper uses the Fear No Evil, basically gets nothing out of it? I do think that Renegades in the late game probably had better tools, but it just felt like they didn't really have a way to convert those tools into actual success in the team fights.
Yeah, that last Fear No Evil you're talking about, yeah, he did that to Benji. Benji doesn't care about you dropping a huge CC field. My man hit Bat Out of Hell and literally murdered Lasbra for free. It comes down to the execution. Renegades have so many tools to engage. Agni has long-range engage factor. The Jing Shen was doing so much with the washing machine. They have Lazar with the Fear No Evil. It's just that really the only one who's finding a good home for all of his CC that game on the side of Renegades was the 408.
Yeah, and then you have to just give credit over to the dive on Radiance. They were able to execute it so effectively. Also, Cyclone Spin, you mentioned earlier, had a really great game. I think this Heimdall has really been a home for Cyclone Spin lately to sort of get back into that level of play that we know that we can expect from him. But remember, the way that they lost their Agony Veneno in that last fight, even with a friendly Fear No Evil on top of him, it did not matter because Camazot just goes up into the ultimate and kills him, right? There was not enough they could do to sustain throughout that dive towards the tail end of that game when they started to run out of options. So we go into the picks and bans now for game number 3 here, Mifflin. Radiance will be in that first pick spot, and there's still a lot riding on this set. If Renegades could find a way to upset Radiance here, it would be big for them.
It would shake up the entire standings. It would shake up who we think could make it into the playoffs. Renegades need this win. And when the need arises, I think the best call you can make right now in this very second, go ahead and ban out that Heimdall. Cyclone Spin has had 2 back-to-back stellar performances on this god, and it covers a lot of the weaknesses that we have been pointing out about Radiance's long lane. Usually they can get focused out, they get picked, they do all these wibbly-wobbly plays. Yeah, Heimdall covers all that. CC immunity in the ultimate, a teleport, the insane amount of vision to keep Lasbra from going for his signature level 2 ganks. Yeah, Heimdall just mitigates all of that.
Does make those options, or just make you a lot safer over there in the long lane. It feels like at times when you could potentially have gotten punished otherwise. So far, these bans, though, not too reactive. A lot of the same stuff being removed. The Aphrodite, the King Arthur, Renegades boxed in by Aurora's unique performance level on this Hercules, so that is banned away as well, which means there is no room to ban away that Heimdall. But remember, it was picked 6th for Radiance last time. They did not top prioritize it, and it looks like that'll be the case here again. If Renegades can pilot it, it might not hurt them to try and strip that away.
This is an interesting shift in the P's and B's phase. Normally when you see the majority of the top meta mages left available, you take the first pick to take something else, maybe the Heimdall or a really good Guardian like Sobek, because you know that the enemy team isn't going to take both. But Radiance picking out the Raijin first means that Renegades can take just about anything that they want. For my money, I would have said, you know, Merlin, Ra, some of these more meta picks, but I know you're a huge fan of this Agni, and it seems like Ben is as well.
I am a big fan of it, but I don't know how great of an argument last game was for the Agni, right? The Merlin at most stages of the game did seem to be more of a value pick, but we're not going to see the Merlin this time at all, and that's with him unbanned. So it's the Raijin and the Agni that have been selected by these 2 mid laners this go around. It looks like Radiance want the Unbots on their side. I think they felt as though maybe they've given too much control over to Radiant, or Renegades rather, in these drafts, so they're taking it for their side.
I like the pick. You never ever catch me slandering a Hunbot's pickup. This god does just about everything you want out of the jungle. He's got engage, he's got burst, he's got team fight potential. He scales well into the late game. It's just a good standard pick. I am surprised to see that Radiance don't reprise the Heimdall pick though, instead electing for the Terra. It's going to bring some survivability, but that's such a good hunter that they've had so much success with that it seems a little bit strange to me that they let it go by the wayside.
Renegades should be able to ban it here, and they absolutely will. Their first at-bat, so to speak, they take that Heimdall off the table. What I'm noticing right away here, though, Myth, these are comfort picks for Renegades in a must-win type situation. The Agni for Venenu, that's something he just loves to play. What about the Fafnir for Awesome Jake? Something he loves to play. Same for Lasbra on this Pele. I wonder if we'll see that trend continue for Barracuda as well as into the solo lane for Solar or Troll. If it does, I'd imagine it's something like Jing Wei for Barra, and then for SOT, it could be anything. Maybe a Cerberus coming back out from him. We've seen him do well in that pick before.
I do like Cerberus in general. That's new for me. I'm not a huge fan of this god, but SOT has so much dominance on it in his games. He's been able to win his lane. He rotates out early. It's going to bring that CC that they're lacking on a little bit. I think it would be a fantastic pickup. Having these comfort picks for Renegades is so huge. This game is incredibly high stakes for them, so the fact that they're relying on their own internal meta, the things that they know that they can play well, that's pretty exciting, but it's showing that maybe they think that just playing the meta isn't the only way they can win, and when the backs are against the wall, why not just play what we're comfortable with?
Well, we had a feeling it'd be the Jing Wei for Barracuda in a world where that wasn't banned. Instead, Radiance kind of turned their eye towards banning away some of Solar or Troll's picks. They ban away the Amaterasu and the Nike. I don't think they want to deal with these big team-fighting solo laners who could rotate over later on in the game. But here's the ROM. I think that the sort of resurgence for Cyclone Spin here lately, Myth, has been two-pronged. It's been the Heimdall we already highlighted, but he's also looked really good on ROM after his changes.
And Rom has a surprisingly good matchup in a Jingwei. You can cripple out the dash. You always are going to win out in those auto chains or auto exchanges because you have the attack speed stim. You're going to deal slowing. You're going to have more damage per auto attack. And if she uses that airstrike to escape a sticky situation at low health, my man's going to get sniped. It's a really good lane for Cyclone Spin.
I like this, though. I think this Thor is for Solar or Troll over in the solo lane. And we have seen solo Thor before. He has the ability to rotate over into these fights very early. If this does go over to SOT, how do you feel about that, Myth?
I like what it brings for your team. I don't like how it feels for the individual solo laner. He doesn't have very good matchups. He should be able to get bullied by the Skakullen, but if he can keep his head above water, get to that level 5 state, then he rotates in a mid and he puts the rest of his team ahead, it should make up for the fact that Thor has a weaker laning phase.
It should, and this is something that we have seen from SOT and from all of our solo laners before. It's not particularly common, certainly not showing up every week, but it's not unheard of either. So if that is going to be the case here, that's a big call, I feel like, to make in a potential do-or-die match here, Miffle. But it's game number 3, that decider. Let's get it down to Dulcet and Aggro.
Thank you, Finch. Thank you, Mifflin. And this one, it's so big, not only just to decide the set, but remember, just to bring us full circle here, a lengthy game 2, somewhat lengthy game 1. Maybe you forgot the importance here. Radiance lock in their spot in the playoffs with the win here. Renegades keep themselves in that conversation. So ever so important for both teams to come away with it. Now, Aggro, I think there's a lot to break down on an individual god basis. Obviously, kind of the first thing to do here in game number 3, and maybe more so than anything else. This Thor here in the solo lane, certainly a different look for SOT, especially coming off a game as a Nike, where the game plan is Sentinel of Zeus into as many people as possible.
Well, now it's just Anvil of Dawn into as many people as possible.
Fair enough.
Start out a little further away, I suppose. Look, I watch SMITE incessantly. I'm watching streams. I watch every single SPL game that's happened over the last few years. I don't know if there are many mechanical Thor players better than SOT. He just hits his buttons, man. And now he's getting a gank from Lasbra that's going to set him ahead. And This is perfect. This is what I want to see every single game out of Renegades. No sitting on your hands. No waiting for them to come to you. Forge your own path. Make your own destiny. And Lasbra gets off and gets that first blood, sets SOT up. Now SOT has the opportunity to rotate a little bit earlier than Benji will, in theory. He's going to hit 5 earlier than Benji will. It's a great start, and I think that Mifflin's right. If you can get out of laning phase, you're looking good. That's a great start for getting out of laning phase.
And Lasbra just rotates all the way through, swoops by blue and harpies and speed, and doesn't find anything there for him on the invade on the back end, but notice was able to drop that vision shard back by the harpies. So if nothing else, yeah, you see the pings now. You'll be able to sense out where adapting is rotating on this Hun Bats, and it'll be likely back to speed here in just a moment. So a dream start for SOT on the store here in the solo lane. I am curious though, and maybe it's just too early to tell, kind of where a build path looks like for a Thor here in the solo. I mean, you look at Camazotz in solo and then in the jungle, and obviously one's more assassin-y, full damage, the other a touch more bruisery. Is that kind of the same mindset you would expect SOT to have here on this Thor? Maybe bruiser if you're in solo and take a little more damage if you're in the jungle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when it was popular a little bit ago, it was really all about the Blackthorn Hammer. That's not really in the meta now, but that's the same sort of idea. Jake in a rough spot after using that underhand tactics to try and steal away the purple, but ends up being safe. Still had the shell, and that jump was going to come up sooner rather than later. So I think he knows that he's pretty safe to take that high-risk play. But yeah, I'd expect a Void Shield, could be glad. Normally, I think the old build for Thor was boots into Breastplate of Valor. You just want as much CDR as you can so that you can start rotating. So maybe that's the direction that Solo Ritual will go. That I think it would transform into a black, you'd get Breastplate into Blackthorn, but it might be, boots into Breastplate into Runic Shield or something like that, or on Chile to just give yourself a little bit more power and magical protection.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be tough for Benji here, especially if Lasbra starts to rotate through. A couple tools for lockdown there, and only a little bit on the escape from Benji, depending on where that rage bar maybe stands. So a great start for the Renegades, but the leverage is really what we saw in Game 1, and maybe we didn't see in Game 2. They were able to push that advantage on and on and on. And as much as we've talked about SOT, in a set where it's really been a game of two junglers, and now in Game 3, it's going to have to fall one way or the other. It's Lasbra who is in the same position he was in Game 1 and in the same position adapting was in Game 2. This Pele is going to need to swing a little bit and keep pushing this lead for the Renegades.
That's really going to be the key, and adapting hits 5 first, so again, that you have to watch out for that Fear No Evil, but full boots done for Lasbra already, so even though he doesn't have that ultimate, he's still awfully strong.
Whoa! They think they can do this, and they might just be able to. Benji underneath this tier 1 tower, one final auto from Lasbra, and the dash to get out alive. SOT sets it up, and that's exactly what I was talking about. There's just enough follow-up there to maybe get the kill, and you don't have a Bat Out of Hell, you don't have a World Serpent. Yeah, Thor's not a standard solo laner, but an Anvil of Dawn will get you out just the same.
Really good reaction time on hearing that blink in, because no beads, obviously, in that solo lane for Solo. He's picked up the teleport, so he's got to use that Anvil of Dawn as CC immunity as soon as adapting comes knocking on the return gank, and does so successfully. And now Lasbra's found both kills, Solo's found both assists, no teleport for Benji, so he's missing extra farm in that lane. This time Venenu's not falling behind in the mid lane. I mean, he's up a level right now on Big Man. This is ideal for Renegades.
So rotation over to this blue buff. Could be bad to worse here for Benji. My god, this guy has not been able to be comfortable in the first 5.5 minutes. You can't stand in lane, you can't be anywhere near your blue buff, and you certainly can't be beneath your tier 1 tower. Benji is 0-3, 5.5 minutes into this game. A roar may fall as well. Awesome Jake is piling onto this one. Renegades, they're flying out of a cannon here, aggro. Only 6 minutes in, they've got 4 kills.
And look, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Benji's been ganked 3 times. That how you can expect him to live? Well, you have to be able to live when you get ganked sometimes. That's a key part of being a great SPL player, which Benji certainly is, but has really struggled as of late with things just like this. At the beginning of the year, Radiance were on fire. Nobody was beating them. Then, when they started to struggle, it was teams jamming duo lane pressure against them because Aurora and Cyclone were having trouble against it. And then they shored up that lane, and it feels like the leak has sprung in the solo lane because Benji has been very susceptible to get ganked over and over and over again. It happened against Ghost earlier on this week where Fine just got super far ahead and was able to push that lead.
Lasbra's here again, and Lasbra will strike again. At this point, it's like clockwork for this guy. He's made his way to the solo lane 3 times, rotates over into the long lane, cyclone spin down. Beads weren't going to save the ROM here this time. 3-0-1 for Lasbra here in this jungle. I suppose if you're looking for a silver lining now, if you're a Radiance fan or if you're Radiance, it's that Adapting has been able to maintain farm, and he has equal level to Lasbra on the other side. Aurora is under some fire here. Venenu, and who else but SOT through on the rotation. Good disengage, though. Keeps Aurora alive. Big man Tings just tosses some barrels to kind of keep his teammates safe there. The Renegades, they have not let off the gas for minute 1.
Beautiful ultimate from Aurora right on time. That damage mitigation saved his life without a doubt. But it's still pressure from Renegades. They don't let up when they get these leads. And this is why things like the first pick Hunbats last game for Renegades makes so little sense to me. I don't know that there's a bigger gap right now in the SPL between someone's best god and their next best god for Lasbra on Pele versus Lasbra on literally anything else. It's not that he can't play other things. He had a very good Hunbats game 1. I'm not saying this is his only god, but he is so good at Pele. If I'm on Renegades, I am begging him to pick that god every game. I'm paying for his meal if he picks Pele for me that game. I mean, it just looks so easy for him to get leads on this god.
Well, here we go again, Aggro. This time, though, there is the knock-up through the ultimate for Benji. But Lasbra has made his intentions clear, and Benji has learned and stayed alive this time, is reaching the point now where he might be able to stay alive under a little bit of extra pressure here. Slight red buff invade from Jake, but will be able to leap out alive. Stun down over onto Aurora, but Big Man Tings wants a little bit extra. Raiju will connect. Just plugs down some damage onto Jake. So, I mean, there's no way if you're the Renegades you're keeping up the screaming pace you set in the first 6 minutes. But things have slowed down here, and Radiance have been able to stay alive throughout the last 3 or 4.
I mean, Jake has to use the shell. That's certainly not the end of the world, but that does make him lose some of his potential to be aggressive. Solar Patrol has to be somewhat careful, but really not all that careful. Benji's only level 8. He's already proxied this wave. He's got ultimate. You just chunked Adapting down all by yourself. You're kind of chilling right now if you're SOT.
And that is going to open the door here to a speed buff ultimate. Adapting falls on his own speed. Big Man Tings, though, he's rotated over from the mid lane. Just needs one more barrel to connect, and he certainly found it. And what a prime target to shut down here. 2-level advantage for SOT over Benji. That's going to give the Kulkullen a little bit of time to pull on back. A red buff invade, though, in the meantime, has gone the way of Jake.
But still, I mean, it's pressure exerted by Solar Patrol on the map at any given time. And Lasbra's here to pick up the pieces. He makes sure that wave on right doesn't go to waste and gets the blue buff invade anyways. At the exact same time that Renegades is invading red, looks an awful lot like game 1, doesn't it? And the picks just facilitate this aggressive nature so much more, and Renegades are making it look easy.
Jake will transform here. Aurora has to pop the ultimate this time. Looking for the stun in just a moment will be Jake. But instead it's Aurora that turns it around. The snipes from Cyclone Spin. One doesn't connect, but needs one final auto. Jake was there. Barra couldn't provide enough assistance, and suddenly this long lane, where everything else is crumbling around the map for Radiance, maybe the long lane can be a beacon of hope.
Yeah, that's the risk when you're playing with all this momentum. You know, you're playing with house money. Sometimes you make silly bets, and right there, I mean, it's pretty simple. If Jake hits either of his 2 stuns, they kill Aurora, and that play looks really good. But when you go 0 for 2, it's going to open the door for a really easy fight for Radiance on that side of the map, and just good recognition by the veteran duo lane that, hey, we were in trouble, but that's all the buttons that Jake has available to threaten us now, and they get to kill pretty easily.
What's the greatest movie of all time? Top Gun. Your ego is writing checks your body can't cash. Maybe that's some of it there.
Right.
It's the laughter at the quote, or the fact that Top Gun is definitely the best movie of all time.
Yeah, it's really just like you know, Rain Day used to do that to us all the time. Like, hey guys, let's listen to music from our favorite band, Coldplay. Like all of us, our favorite band is Coldplay. You just Rain Dayed me right there with, yeah, of course, the movie that we all know is the best of all time, Top Gun, for sure. I definitely think that, no doubt, man.
Wait, if you say it with confidence, I don't know, that might mean something. I like it.
Dave,
that's what matters.
would it ruin our friendship? Would it ruin our friendship if I've told you I've never seen
no.
Top Gun?
Yeah, can somebody else hop in here for me real quick in the last, maybe the dying moment? It just might. And luckily you're hinting at it, and Lasbra hinting at maybe dying here, and Adapting has rotated through and found a kill onto the Renegades jungler. SOT, I mean, I hesitate to call him caught out. He has that Anvil of Dawn, so not much will matter there. But another, maybe, moment where the egos are writing checks, and Adapting is happy to collect. Renegades are going to start up this Gold Fury here. Roar taken down, though, by Venenu. The Agni has started to connect here early in this game as well. It's a 1-level lead in the mid, a 1-level lead in solo, 1 in the jungle as well, and hey, 1 in support to round it all out. A couple kills across the map, but make no mistake, Aggro, it is a 4K gold lead 12.5 minutes in, and could get worse when Cyclone gets dove.
No beads for him anymore as well. And SOT goes, yeah, I'd like one of those, please. 1 hunter for me, please. And served up promptly, but it wasn't just the Renegade solo laner that finds a kill onto a backliner. Benji was able to get himself on the board and catch out Venenu, which is pretty big to shut down his farming level because he's level 14 at this point. But still, Renegades have some leaks in the lead, but it hasn't blown wide open quite yet. They're staying afloat pretty nicely with this Gold Fury. Still, I mean, if you ask any team if they'd like a 5K gold lead at 13 minutes, they'd sign in blood for it, regardless of what the recent trend has been. So if you're a Renegades fan, I know that maybe some of these picks are worrying you, but I don't think you've got too much to be concerned about. The Renegades are still in a commanding position.
Well, hey, we were curious where SOT would go with his build, and especially with the lead. I mean, that maybe opens up some different doors, different avenues. I mean, maybe you can afford to play a little bit more aggressively, add a little bit more damage, and maybe it's the Blackthorn Hammer there for SOT in the solo lane that maybe opens that up. You're going to get another look back here at where Venenu was striking for a kill, just around that Gold Fury. Ever so important to get that Agni on the board, and certainly able to do so. And a Pyromancer will be locked down. Benji being rotated on once more. SOT there just for an insurance policy, just in case the kill wasn't confirmed, and it sure was. Unfortunately, Benji has now died for the 4th time in this game.
And it's Renegades just playing smart, using their lead, grouping up. No reason to keep laning when you've got this type of presence coming out of the solo lane. I mean, SOT is huge, man. Level 15, he's matching the mid lane farm, which is hard to do these days in competitive, but he's doing it. And he's top of the player damage charts by a mile last time we looked. So you're feeling confident any time solo is a part of your fight, which should be every time now.
And especially with that Anvil of Dawn. I mean, the kind of intricacies around solo lane rotations, certainly interesting conversations to have when to do it, you know, how easy or difficult it is. Well, when you have an ultimate that just kind of does it for you, it's certainly a touch easier. Now, maybe a moment that I hinted to earlier is that in the long lane here, Cyclone Spin has continued to put pressure over onto Barracuda despite a 1-level difference. And that tier 1 tower has now fallen in the long lane, and though it's not much, it's a little gold that can maybe keep Radiance in the game a little longer.
It's something. I mean, if you've got to find some way to punish Renegades for grouping up as hard as they did to get that Pyromancer earlier. The best way to do it, guarantee that you're shoving in waves that are going to die to the tower, get some tower damage off, get some global golden XP where you can. Benji's done it on this right-hand side. That tower's about half HP because Solar Troll is correctly spent his time rotating around and influencing the rest of the map. Benji and Cyclone know that they aren't able to do that at that same pace, so why not stay in lane, farm up, and get to a point where maybe we can make a comeback. But you're talking about your Phoenix defense now if you're Radiance in my mind. I mean, 7K at 16 minutes is excessive.
And you might have to wait, or you might not have to wait as long to get there if the Renegades keep poking their head into this red buff side of the map for Radiance. Lasbra hanging just close by. Will connect for some damage over onto Aurora, but I agree with this call. Just forfeit the tier 1 tower. No need to put our lives at risk there for that one. Completely open Phoenix in the meantime, over on the short lane side of the map. And something that I looked at earlier is where, obviously, with how Lasbra started off this game, how adapting had been doing, and could be worse here. We'll have to leap away. SOT has the ultimate. A couple members of Radiance lurking close by. Anvil of Dawn drops down. No connection on the stun, but you bet your butt there's a bunch of damage there to get rid of that Hun Bats. Aurora, half HP as well. Awesome Jake will transform, and Lasbra will capitalize for this kill. Some snipes down from Cyclone Spin. Nothing there to be found, and another couple of kills push for the Renegades.
I don't know what happened there to Kenneth, but forgot that his blink was up. Doesn't blink away from the Thorald. I mean, it's telegraphed to a point where you should be able to react to that. Maybe Jake hit him with a hammer and put him in combat right before SOT landed, but Solo's doing the right thing. Yes, I mean, it's obviously telegraphed that you're coming down, but he sits up in the Anvil of Dawn long enough to get his cooldowns back. He's got 30% CBR. He's making sure that when he lands, he's not having to beads and then immediately just walk away. He can hammer away given the right opportunity, and just a little bit late on the blink and the beads there from adapting. Takes too much damage. He's dead no matter if he pre-beads or not, but doesn't get as much as I think Radiance maybe was hoping for.
Well, now the point I was attempting to make before that dive there from SOT is kind of moot. Adapting had been able to keep at least an XP level here with Lasbra. 1, sometimes even levels-wise throughout much of the part of this early game, thanks to some good farming. But now it's 1, but arguably 1.5, as it was just 2. Cyclone Spin continuing to fall behind Barracuda, though. It's been quiet here in this long lane aggro, but as if the rest of the map isn't going poorly here for you, Radiance, regardless of a tier 1 tower being taken previously by Cyclone Spin. You've got Barracuda 2 levels up on your Hunter as well.
Realistically, there's just not, I mean, it just takes so long for Hunters to get to the carry point that it's a little bit too hard for Cyclone to do anything else, and nothing Aurora can do when you're caught out like that. It's Solar Patrol again, and all this aggressive warding. Look at all the wards dotted through Radiance's left side of the jungle. There's just nowhere that Radiance can walk right now with any sort of safety.
Well, Benji is feeling, I suppose, safe, pushing up that short lane all the way back by the Renegade speed buff. It is Pyromancer being looked at by the Renegades here and will be secured by the Renegades, so another gold lead pulled. I'm actually thinking about the Fire Giant here. Aurora still dead, so it'd be a 20-minute FG, and I suppose when you're 10k gold ahead, maybe it affords you the luxury of a 20-minute Fire Giant. Adapting hanging close by. All ultimates available for Radiance. All actives are there as well. SOT will take to the skies. Down he goes onto the Fire Giant. Radiance, they've taken it away. Maybe they bought themselves a second wind here in this game. Immediately, they've lost a couple of those buffs. Big Man Tings, Aurora, Cyclone Spin. They've still got it, and it's stuff like that, aggro, that'll keep you in these games.
Yeah, just really, I couldn't tell what Renegades wanted to do. I couldn't tell what Radiance wanted to do either, frankly. Did they want to get in there and defend that? Did they really want to commit Benji on that flank to go in at the timing that he did? But Benji bides his time effectively. I think it was Adapting or Cyclone that ended up stealing it away. It was Cyclone with the snipes or Adapting with the ultimate. I don't think Benji lived long enough to really hit fire, but maybe it was him too. Renegades don't have great secure. They were just relying on the levels. And look, it doesn't win Radiance the game right now, but it very well could prevent them from losing the game right now, which was really the key for them.
It's really delaying things out. Wow, Aurora taken low, and might be SOT to finish him off, and it sure is. The Anvil of Dawn will connect for the 6th kill in this game for SOT, and maybe most notably 1 level away from 20 for him, 1 level away from 20 for Venenu as well. I couldn't quite see what took that Fire Giant away. I think we might be able to kind of take a closer look at it there, especially with as important as little things like that are. I mean, it's really Benji there on the front line. SOT maybe looking for the execute. There's just a couple of leaps there, and at the end.
Looked to me like Adapting snuck an auto in after that overhand smash, and that's what managed to steal it away. Could have been the snipes from Cyclone as well, but again, there was a lot of buttons happening in there. All I know is that the Radiance managed to get the objective, and now they defended their tier 2. This is a 15-step program for Radiance to get back in this game. It's a lengthy list, but step 1, Steal Fire, has been checked off the list. Got to work our way down the rest of them soon.
Step 2 is on the horizon here, and just trying to pull yourself gold and XP-wise as slowly as possible is certainly on the table. Getting your own red buff is helpful, as Awesome Jake has taken away a good bit of them here this game. This Fafnir pick as well, so much of the conversation around SOT and Lasbra for good reason. I think Jake has done a great job, and a pick like this in the Fafnir I think fits Jake's playstyle pretty well.
He's been rock solid on it all year, except for the very first time he played at week 1, where he looked a little bit gun-shy on using the ultimate. Every other game since, he's been very impressive on it. I love Renegades prioritizing it heavily for him.
It's a good draft here for the Renegades, and a bad game so far for Benji. Maybe not due to any fault of his own. He's just had 5 people in his lane more often than not, and down goes the Kulkullen. There's been continued dominance there in that solo lane, but then the big question has to become now for the Renegades, especially with how far behind Benji is anyway, and at 1-6-1 that stands out. He's only 1 level away here from level 20. Do you feel the Renegades could be doing more to push these advantages? Right now, you're going to get a kill onto a roar. What do you do on the back end?
Now you're running it down mid. I mean, the kill onto Benji is one thing. You're splitting every wave or every lane. Someone is going to get picked, but Aurora overstaying is really bad because now that staggers you even further, makes it really, really hard for you to defend Phoenix. Losing the tier 2 off Benji dying, who cares? You were going to lose that tier 2 anyways, sooner rather than later. Losing the Phoenix because all of your front line is dead is really bad.
3 open Phoenixes, 23 minutes into this game. Cyclone Spin will take to the skies here. SOT, he'll do the same as well. Big Man Tings, though, does enough to push out this fight. It's a good Fear No Evil from adapting as well. Barracuda, though, is struck for first blood here in this fight. Benji turns around one on Awesome Jake out on an island on his own. It's a mid-Phoenix and a 1-for-1 trade, and the Renegades will pull themselves back.
And Van and Lasbra are pretty weak, so I don't think there's a guaranteed Gold Fury here for Renegades on the back end. They know they're being chased because of good ward coverage, so shouldn't be anyone getting caught. Lasbra barely gets his back off. But this could very easily be a Gold Fury for Radiance, which they could use pretty desperately.
Gold Fury started half HP. SOT, that shiny level 20 will not be able to take it away. The damage was almost there, but in the meantime, on the opposite side of the map, the Renegades will take that Pyromancer away. So Fire Giant has since fallen off. It was a 20-minute FG. Fire Giant respawning now for the Renegades to maybe look at, but if to look at maybe the circumstances that opened them up to that Fire Giant last time, you still have to be wary, though. It's a couple members of Radiance hovering around that level 20 mark. Builds, though not complete, not far off. This gold differential is massive, but certainly I don't think aggro puts Radiance out of contest range.
I mean, when you stole the last one, you may as well try and do it again, but this can't happen. What a CC chain from Renegades, man. Benji didn't get to play for 4 straight seconds. No chance for him to survive right there, and that is going to spell the end of a Fire Giant contest.
Well, I suppose that's the different circumstances. In a full-on engagement, maybe it just takes one sneaking in and stealing it away, but when you open up the door and Benji walks through it and then slams shut behind him, well, that'll result in a free Fire Giant for 5 members here of the Renegades. Cyclone Spin has pushed down the tier 2 tower in the long lane. Big-time Phoenix defense here. You need it to go your way despite a 4v5 disadvantage, and opening up with massive damage onto Jake is certainly one way to start. There was a nice 3-man stun onto a couple members of Radiance, but it won't result in anything. Renegades have overstayed their welcome. They won't even get the Phoenix, and only 3 members left limping away.
Yeah, I don't know what Lasbra and Jake thought was going to happen, but that was pretty easy to execute on for Radiance. I mean, Lasbra blinks in, no beads, into a team that has Hun Bats. No chance you get to survive a late game Fear No Evil. And Jake goes in without waiting for Solar Patrol to get his ultimate back up. They were trying to push the pace because Benji was still dead, but is Benji really that scary? I mean, I guess he's full build now, so it doesn't really matter that he's 2 and 7. He's still level 20 Cucullin eventually, but that was a poorly thought out engagement by Renegades. I think that one was pretty obvious what the outcome was going to be.
Look at this attitude shift from Radiance as well. They're going to push entirely out of their base. There are some pings from the Renegades kind of peppering that back Harpy and purple buff side, though not connecting over the top of the Renegades or Radiance icons on the map. Wary, maybe, of a threat just waiting around the corner. Radiance can't overstay, though. I mean, you see here they have to go back and deal with these fire minions in the middle lane, and over in that short lane there's some big waves pushing on in as well. And I think a big turnaround here, Aggro, in this one. You look at kind of, obviously in the solo lane, because that's where so much has started, but Big Man Tings, look at the damage charts, now matches SOT, who's flying through this game. This Raijin has helped Radiance turn around some of these big fights, and it's got to be a factor for the Renegades to identify on these next sieges.
You get to this point as Raijin, doesn't matter how far behind your boys are, you're going to pull your weight, no doubt about it. And this has been a pretty classic big man set for me. I mean, he's a guy, he's rock solid in his consistency. I don't think he's ever going to lose you the game in mid, but they need him to step up and be the guy who wins them the game, which is something that we don't see him do as consistently as I think that his skill level would really lead me to believe it would happen.
Well, let's try this right side Phoenix Siege one more time. This time both teams fully reinforced, all ultimates online, all actives except for the big man Tings Aegis are available as well. 5-man push here on the right-hand side of the map for the Renegades. Cyclone Spin will pepper down some good damage, admittedly, over onto Venenu, and look at Benji! He's made his way into the back, and that's a big knock-up onto a few members of the Renegades. He's gotten the kill onto the Agni as well. SOT takes to the skies, down he goes onto Cyclone Spin, but the Aegis will save his life just for a moment. SOT, though, back on a rampage now, has found some squishy backline targets. One final shot's all he needs onto adapting, won't find it. Radiance left worse for wear here. 2-for-1 trade in favor of the Renegades, but health bar is quite low. The reinforcements of the fountain a little bit closer now for Radiance. You have to be careful, Renegades, if you keep going too far underneath this right side Phoenix.
Man, Benji just barely escapes. Jake not quite as lucky, but Aurora returns or gets returned right there by Barracuda. Lasbra thirsty for Benji, but won't find him this time around. That's a pretty good defense there by Radiance. It looks like it was going to go even better than it ultimately did because they lose that mid Phoenix once again.
Yep.
Barracuda still looking to get this Phoenix because Solar Patrol is going to back him up.
Where's the Anvil of Dawn go this time around? Barracuda disengaging, and as such, SOT will as well. Maybe just sensing that Radiance could overstep. Right now, it's base defend time for Radiance. Yeah, Renegades aren't in range, but there sure are some minion waves pushing into your map. And with Lasbra down for the next 25 seconds, Jake is as well. I mean, this is, potentially map shift time for Radiance. Let's get some of these waves at least equal, pushing into the middle of the map instead of crashing into our side of the base. Primal Fury is up, Fire Giant in 30 seconds. Where these waves stand, Aggro, are going to be so important.
It's going to be huge because you just get so much free pressure on the map, and the fact that there's a Primal Fury and not an Oni Fury probably has Renegades cursing the gods because they could really use that extra map pressure that an Oni Fury provides. Cyclone has really done an interesting job in these team fights. He's ulting at the very beginning of every team fight, not really using that ROM snipe to finish off low health targets, but instead setting up the targets to be low health in the first place. Venenu's been on the receiving end of ROM snipes to start off just about every engagement, and Cyclone has been incredibly accurate on those shots, but really hasn't been able to find a way to be effective after the fact. He's pretty low on the player damage charts right now. I think if he starts climbing, Radiance are really not in that bad of a spot somehow.
I agree.
I don't know how, but they're in this game.
Hey, well, the SSG Radiance set, we saw Cyclone Spin play the ROM 3 times. In Game 1, Cyclone was 10-1-9 on the character, and that was the only set the only game Radiance would win that set, and I only bring that up to show that he's potent once he gets this build online, and it's certainly there. A couple Spectral Armors for Renegades will try to shrug off some of that damage, and Renegades will need to do so. Fire Giant started here. Enhanced variety this time around. Half HP. In goes Adapting to the back side, and they found a good engagement, but Adapting, he's overstayed his welcome, and Barracuda will shut down the Hun Bats, but Cyclone Spin will return the favor back onto Barra. Big Man Tings will crash some great damage into SOT. Some shielding as well from Jake will provide a little bit of extra longevity here for the Renegades, but Benji has found himself a clean kill, or a clean fight rather, over onto SOT. Won't result in the kill here. Benji left disengaging somehow aggro. It's a 1-for-1 trade, and Radiance have to back off with their Titan under attack from some minions.
Oh, but look at this teleport back in from Solo Retrol. He's back on full HP, and no one from Radiance will be able to say the same. Cyclone goes down to Lasbra. Benji looks to be next until he gets some good jukes off, but then finally flattens him with the bomb. I don't know if they could end super effectively, though, Dave. Adapting's up in 10, and they don't have their best DPS on the Titan alive, which is Barracuda. So Renegades decide to back it up. No waves on either of these side Phoenixes. Radiance have done a phenomenal job of pushing up both side lanes.
Well, I think it's time to ask now, Aggro. We are 33 minutes into the game. It is technically a 10k gold lead, maybe 11. I'm not sure how much that matters here. I think we've approached the point where, again, outside of just some consumables, the roaring start Renegades had has been mitigated by Radiance. The Fire Giant, the buffs, are going to be the next big tools here, and the Renegades seem poised to take this enhanced Fire Giant. The Radiance guys will give it up.
Yeah, this is, you were talking about wave management. This is where it comes up huge, because Renegades with 2 people down can't get anything but enhanced Fire Giant, and they can't put pressure on this mid Phoenix right away either, because they have to be so concerned with pushing up these side waves. And the Fury's not up for, this is going to be an Oni Fury next, which is exactly what Renegades want, but it's not up for about 1.5 minutes. That's a long time to waste on your Fire Giant, especially when there's a one-shot Phoenix kind of waiting to be taken. You won't be able to do both. You have to make a choice. Do we go and get this mid Phoenix and siege up, or do we wait around for this Oni Fury to help us do it? And it looks like Renegades are willing to play this one a little bit slower and wait for this Oni Fury, but I'm sure Radiance is happy to have a minute to breathe.
I was going to say, I think on the flip side of that coin, it's a no-brainer for Radiance. Hey, we have to sit back and defend these Phoenixes. There's no world where you're kind of blindly extending out into the jungle, especially when the Renegades have good ward coverage for there. So the chess game is really on the Renegades side now to play their pieces, and Radiance, they're going to have to counterswing, but their main counterswing is just hanging in base. The ultimate objectives are on their side of the map, and they know that. Renegades will get the waves pushing, though, and more closely on this left-hand side. They're going to send Lasbra to the mid, and over on the opposite side is SOT, so a bit of a 3-1-1 split this time around, and Radiance will answer with a 3-2 with some floaters of their own. SOT can certainly solo out this right side Phoenix, and it looks like he's going to be able to with the help of Lasbra and some minions. Cyclone Spin hammers away at Venenu. My goodness, Aurora might be able to walk in and finish off the kill. Not just yet. Barracuda, though, melts down the Terra in the backline. 2 Phoenixes down in the base. But can you win the rest of the fight, Renegades? Big Man Tings, Thunder crashes through, shuts down Jake. SOT will Anvil of Dawn down onto the Raijin. No Thunder Crash to get him out of this one, and SOT, he'll be thankful for it. Suddenly, Lasbra, left with half HP, has to disengage from the rest, but Cyclone Spin, he's still alive. The dodge roll turns around some damage over onto SOT, 3v2 on the defense.
This should be game, but unless Cyclone can make some insane plays, he's got a beefy body in front of him, courtesy of Benji, but this should be it for Renegades. They've got 20 seconds with a lot of damage on the table, and the Titan at its most exposed. It's got to be up to Cyclone Spin to defend here.
Cyclone Spin and Benji, 3 Phoenixes down, left wave crashing through. That's a stun onto Cyclone, but he dodge rolls his way out of this one. Benji separating Venenu from the rest of this fight. Cyclone's going to be able to clear out these minions, and it looks like the Renegades, they're going to call off the offense here. A couple members of Radiance just now back and respawning. There was no fight, but Radiance were able to buy enough time and save their base.
Little surprised, Dave, that Renegades don't just all in the Titan at that point. I mean, Cyclone, no relics. You force him to roll back to base. I mean, if we're Agni dashing the Titan, if we're double bombing it, whatever we've got in the tank, and you just let Barra, who still had beads, stay alive and get in there. I mean, I don't know. It would have been close, and this is still a high percentage win for Renegades by doing this. They back up, they get that Oni Fury. Now it's not just Oni waves, it's Oni fire waves that are going to be coming down, and that's going to be problematic. But fire is going to be off of you by the time you get here, so for the power you're gaining in terms of your support, you're losing power yourself.
Watch out, Lasbro. Radiance maybe move themselves into a spot where you can get an opening pick over onto the Renegades jungle. Look at this. SOT pushing in that wave in the middle. You see on your map there the left, middle, and right lanes graced by some Oni fire minions moving themselves down through the map. Cyclone's been huge for Radiance in these last few fights, and he's going to have to rotate in on the backside. SOT, he wants to solo the Radiance Hunter, but to the skies goes Cyclone Spin. To maybe plug down some damage to actually just disengage Benji. He's found a big knock-up, and it's followed up so well by adapting here. Big Man Tings with some big-time damage. It's a double for the team, and suddenly Radiance had flipped this game around. Awesome Jake left retreating.
I just don't know why Renegades is willing to entertain that fight at all. Just run. Just don't let them fight you in that corridor. That's the only place the Radiance can fight you that you don't insta-win the game, because you let them push up waves a little bit as you had to. You had to back and reset, but then you don't just run and force them to go back to base. If you ever get to the Titan, you win. So I'm just shocked that Renegades is so willing to take that fight at all. I know relics are down on Radiance, but your relics are down too. I think that's just a horrendous call by Renegades to give Radiance so much time in take that fight that they didn't need to take.
And really, for the first time this game, Aggro, since we've left kind of the laning phase, it's Radiance who has the ability to make a chess move in this game. They've been full-on defense mode, letting Renegades come to them. And now the call is to start up this enhanced Fire Giant. 2 members of the Renegades still back in base and dead. Renegades in range to maybe finish off the Fire Giant, but smartly delayed here. Roar quite low. SOT decides not to dive into the Fire Giant pit, and Radiance will burn it down. 5 members strong with enhanced Fire Giant buff. But can you keep them all alive is the next question. Adapting, he'll sure do his best. He is able to do so, but watch out for the minions in your base.
But Cyclone and Big Man get their backs off. That's huge. And now look at these Phoenixes popping up on each side. Radiance, I mean, they're going to get all 3 Phoenixes up, it looks like, at this rate.
It's really XP, gold, you could argue it doesn't matter. It's really map pressure, and still, that's on the Renegade side here. Left side Phoenix down, mid lane, right side Phoenix, but a couple Barracuda autos away from going down. And it's still the Renegades who are on this aggressive push. Remember Lasbro, he got collapsed on last time. Cyclone Spin, he's chunking down so much health as Pele caught in the back of the Radiance base. Lasbro looking for the 1v1. The Aegis saves Cyclone's life, but not for long. Lasbro ends up finding the kill there, adapting. He's on the chase, he'll slam down. Might be able to finish off Lasbro. It's a 1-for-1 trade, and it's Lasbro on the left side caught out once more, but watch out for SOT.
Looking for Big Man Tings. Beads are up, and Big Man gonna use them and send himself back to base. But on this right-hand side, Benji still hunting for Barracuda. Can't quite find him with that airstrike distance. And SOT, the minions, they get the Phoenix, and they're looking for Aurora as well.
That's a Thunder Crash back in for Big Man Tings. The Taiko drums paired with the Fear No Evil. It's a match made in heaven, and SOT goes down. Radiance one more time. Save the right side Phoenix. They've defended this base and keep this game alive 40 minutes in.
Dave, you might be a part of history, man. There are not many games where teams have gone down all 3 Phoenixes and managed to come back and win. We're talking counting on one hand territory, I'm pretty sure. We're near 3 or 4 now, but feels like we have not seen it very often. I think Radiance has the tools to do it. I think that Renegades just have really made a couple of mistakes that have let Radiance come back into this game. And look, Radiance has played very well on the back end. It's not to take any credit from them, but you don't get to play perfectly down 10K at 15, 16 minutes or whatever and win the game. That's not how it works in SMITE. Your opponents need to open the door for you, and the combination has been there. It's the perfect storm so far. It's not out of the woods yet here for Radiance, but they've still got a minute and a half with Enhanced Fire Giant, and that should be enough to buy some space on their base.
And talk about this turnaround again. Well, I mentioned it 20 minutes ago, but now really 40 minutes in, the space Benji has been creating in these fights, it cannot be understated. Now he has the Toxic Blade, as Doug points out, mitigate some of that healing from Renegades as well. So easy to get tilted in a game like this, and I'm sure he was. But this Cullen has been massive for Radiance in finding some good backline lockdown.
He's been huge. I mean, certainly the space has been valuable. Cyclone has put Ven to half HP or less in every single fight, pretty much. Whoa. With just use of that ultimate. He's really been focused on keeping this Agni uncomfortable in these engagements. I mean, Aurora has also been creating space, doing a great job. Dave, this game's even, man. I mean, yes, Radiance have that right side Phoenix down, but that wave is so far pushed up. And they've got Fire Giant. It's also once fire falls off, the fire waves are on the side of the map that's easy to defend on. I mean, you can easily stand around fire and then poke your head over, clear a wave, and come right back to contesting it. Renegades have had every fight be heavily slanted in their favor up until this point. Every single fight this game has been Renegades' favor.
You're not wrong.
This might be the first 5-on-5 all game that is even. And Radiance have won their fair share of 5-on-5s with Renegade's name on them. Gotta think that now that they're even, that puts them in a pretty good spot.
I agree. And on the flip side of that coin, you look at the damage Cyclone Spin's been able to pour out. Barracuda's absolutely been there as well. 7-2-6 now on this Jingwei. Late game Jingwei and Barracuda. You gotta love it. And now this Fire Giant ever so pivotal. I mean, at this point in the game, and it goes without saying, I mean, both teams have open Phoenixes. Both teams are full build, level 20. There's got to be a little extra weight, and maybe you wonder if that plays into your mindset, because from what we've seen at this point, you lose one or two too many people, and suddenly this game is over, all for a Fire Giant.
It's definitely end-of-game territory here for either side. I mean, if Renegades lose 4 members pretty cleanly, they'll lose the game. They only have 1 tier 2 tower standing. It's pretty easy to march up right.
Nuts.
It's Radiance have carved a path to victory at this point, which is very, very impressive by them, no doubt.
Well, time to take some stock. All 20 actives are ready going into this Fire Giant fight, so plenty of self-peel for the carries as well. Doug pointing out, smartly I think, that the long lane has started to crash its way in towards the Radiance base. That's something Radiance have done so well on this defensive side, I think. You know, backs against the wall. They found those small openings to step out, get some waves pushing in, at least to even on the map. Right now, though, it's still the Renegades are going to aggressively push forward. Look at this, though. SOT does have upgraded TP, so if a fight breaks out, he'll be able to rejoin it, but instead it's a couple members of Radiance thinking about backing. It's only Cyclone Spin who's triggering it, but we'll cancel it kind of back and forth. I'm not sure there's any way you defend this Phoenix and it'll end up going down to SOT, but can Radiance find anything in the meantime? That you can see them pushing forward, Renegades pulling themselves back from that Fire Giant pit, and Cyclone Spin finally completing the back.
But now you pull if you're Renegades, because Cyclone, it's going to take him a while to push out a wave and then rotate in. This is very smart, and I love the play that Solar Patrol makes. He might even stick around and try and pick Cyclone on the rotation. He's got enough damage with that Heartseeker.
Adapting, he's going to blink into this fight, drops the Fear No Evil, but enough disengage from the Renegades won't result in much. Watch out for SOT. Big man Tings, wondering maybe where he crashes down. Aurora, he's the first one to go down here in this fight. Adapting, I'm not sure he expected SOT to be there. He's going to be left running from this one as well. SOT quite quick and has some gap close ability. Adapting certainly can run away as well. In the meantime, Fire Giant started up here by the Renegades, and nobody from Radiance is here on the chase. Big man Tings, though. Thunder crashes in. Benji is going to jump down onto SOT. No Anvil of Dawn to disengage here from this fight. Can you buy time for your hammer to come off of cooldown? Yes, he can. SOT, he makes it over the wall here. 5 members strong for the Renegades, but Benji, he's got something to say about it. One more leap will do it.
That's huge to get that kill on this Solo. Solo just chases Adapting way too deep. And now it's 70 seconds. Who cares if he's got upgraded TP? 70 seconds is a long time to wait.
Radiance may have just bought themselves a free Phoenix defense here. How aggressive do the Renegades want to get?
Wow.
SOT has been massive here in this game, and the answer is not at all. Granted, they don't have a wave pushing in just yet, but look at Venenu backing off. They don't want to even stick around to try to push out into the Radiance base some of these minions that are crashing in.
It's just really been the way this whole set has gone. When one team makes a good play, someone on the team then makes a horrible play on the back end. I mean, it's just, in what world does Solo or Troll ever catch adapting there? It's only when adapting messes up. Counting on a two-time world champ to make a horrible mistake to lose his team the game is not the play. So all you've done is put yourself way out of position, and it's an easy pick by Radiance. It's an easy pick by Radiance, and it completely stuffs your best opportunity. Now an Oni Fury that Renegades could have gotten is now on the Radiant side. Renegades don't care about those Oni waves, but they care a lot that it's not on their side, that it's not an Oni fire wave coming on the left-hand side that would have really put pressure on the Radiance base. That enhanced Fire Giant, you've lost 1.5 minutes of that buff already. And we haven't even gotten close to the Phoenix. And SOT doesn't have that buff, which is important because he's been one-shotting people when he has enough power.
Right.
Big mistake, man. Big mistake.
And a big payoff for Radiance here. Oni Wave's just now leaving the base. It's just going to buy some time, though. 2 minutes left on the Fire Giant buff for 4 members of the Renegades. And I got to think, man, I mean, obviously it goes without saying, the Hunter's so important here in these late-game fights, especially on base sieges, but only the one Spectral Armor locked in. It's Benji here. Granted, Benji's been the one diving in on that backline, but you look at the mine paid to Cyclone Spin as well. A couple Spectral Armors, one for SOT, one for Awesome Jake. You could maybe argue there's a slightly more open window maybe for Barracuda. Granted, Spectral Armor not completely game-changing in that regard. But this Jingwei with those crits is going to have to melt some targets here and some sieges.
And look, the reason that the Renegades won that last fight so easily is because Adapting did exactly what Lasbra did in Game 2. He hard whiffed a Fear No Evil. You're not getting that again, right? I mean, the chances of you getting that same instance is a bit low.
Well, here we go. Cyclone Spin will plug some damage into the Renegades, who are now retreating. Down comes SOT, but yeah, you've only locked down a Roar here. Can you finish off the kill? SOT sure can. Benji finds his way back onto Lasbra and will get the knock up there. Titan under attack here. Phoenix is back respawning, so Radiance really need to win this fight. Lasbra trying to retreat on out, and Adapting has cleaned up Barracuda in the meantime. Finally, the Pele goes down, and Cyclone Spin, he'll snipe down onto Venenu. 3-kill swing here for Radiance. You've only lost a Roar and SOT left on the run.
Look at where Jake's going. He's hunting for another Phoenix to try and force someone to back because as it stands, there's danger for Renegade's Titan, but Jake still has ult. He didn't ult that fight? Hello?
And he's going to melt away at this Phoenix. It's only Adapting who's going to come back to the Radiance base. SOT is here. Might be a base race. Adapting in. Finds some damage over onto Awesome Jake. The Radiance guys on the right-hand side of the map have made their way to the right-hand Phoenix. It's Adapting to keep this game alive for Radiance, but he has to go back to the fountain. Finally, the Titan gets it done. Over onto Jake. The respawn is here. It's big man Tings who's back in this fight. Benji won't be able to get it done on the other side of the map. SOT won't either. It's the Dia side for Radiance 50 minutes into the game.
Oh, but the minions, they still have to worry about them right now. It's so low. And that, I don't know, if Cyclone can end in time. Only 8 seconds? You can't crit the Titan, so you gotta get it honestly.
Cyclone Spin, he's just gotta backpedal, he can't do it. And Barracuda is on his way back. Barracuda, the passive, will land him right on top of Cyclone Spin, just to the side. How aggressive does Barra want to be here? You have to know Radiance are kind of reinforcing back from their base. Cyclone Spin, Barracuda is the big 1v1 here. Barracuda a bit on the worst end of it, and Cyclone Spin will be reinforced. Both Hunters walk away alive.
Okay, so now Radiance has to set a trap. They can't let anybody from Renegades, Jake or Solar Patrol included, get close to that Titan at all. So now you've got to really play the hide the eggs, hide the shell game underneath the cuffs. You've got to figure out exactly which lane Renegades are going to go down. Some aggressive wards up by their buffs can help you, but you've got to find a way to catch Renegades before they get anywhere close to your Titan.
Look how far up Radiance are here. Right side, fire minions for Radiance. Left side, fire minions. And mid lane, fire minions. Aurora Caught down, though, in the middle. Renegades have that advantage, the Fire Minion advantage. Lasbro's looking for the pick, but instead he's just found damage. Can Cyclone Spin snipe him down? Instead, it's Big Man Tings. The trap has been sprung, and it's Lasbra left eating the cheese, and it's looking like Adapting might be able to get the kill over onto Barracuda. Big Man Tings taken low by Jake. SOT is there as well. It's full-on retreat mode now by the Renegades. Radiance looking to take the fight to him.
Oh,
and
man.
Adapting, he'll find the kill. That's the Thunder crash in for Big Man Tings. Barracuda, we need you now.
Gotta be here. And Ven is still full health, too. And a lot of low health bars on the side of Radiance, and they will lose to that minion wave. Remember, no teleport for Benji, so he's now out of this fight. It's just these 4 members of Radiance trying to end it.
Aurora is stunned down here by Venenu. Too much damage for Aurora to stay alive. And that's the eject button for Radiance on this base offense. SOT still alive, no Anvil of Dawn there. Stun connects onto Cyclone Spin, who has to burn the beads. No kill, but a beadsless Cyclone Spin here in a late game fight that's massive.
Man, this is so sketchy. I just wonder if Radiance can back up at this point, because their Phoenixes are going to be up soon. I don't know the Renegades can really get to the Titan before your Phoenixes respawn. And as soon as those Phoenixes respawn, your Titan starts to heal. It's close, man. I don't know. This is a tough call here for Radiance.
SOT has found Cyclone Spin awaiting around the corner. I think smart for Cyclone just to plug some damage and won't chase that one too much further on. Yeah, the Order Titan, see there, the top kind of mid-left of your screen, 2,400 HP. Anyone makes it into that base uncontested, and that Titan's going down here. This is a weird game of chess, Aggro. Both teams have had moments where they've been in control. This is a game of counterplays, maybe a game of chicken is the best way to describe it. Renegades could pull something funky. Radiance have to be prepared for it, but it's not like the Renegades base is all that safe either. Titan full health, but Phoenix certainly down.
Yeah, I mean, you can get backdoored from this position for sure. It's something that's got to be in the back of your mind. I mean,
Okay.
this should be Fire Giant down unless Cyclone's somehow able to snipe it away, but he's too far, so that's going to guarantee EFG. But Radiance have done the impossible. They've gotten their Phoenixes, all 3, back up again, with their Titan now beginning to heal. So now it's not as simple for Renegades. They have to win a fight on a structure and then have enough gas left in the tank to go for more after the fact.
This has been a lot of fun to watch.
What a
huh?
game, dude.
I mean, we call it working. I mean, this is an absolute blast of a game to be a fan of. It seems like 30 minutes ago we're talking about Top Gun and Coldplay, thinking this game is over, and Radiance have absolutely drawn this game out. And you wonder,
Here you go.
it's good
They're
play
great
from
group.
Radiance, but maybe some missed opportunities from the Renegades. Look at this
Watch
roundabout
out.
loop. The carousel is beginning, and it's Lasbra who's on the final seat. Aurora in the front line, catching some damage here from Venenu, but Lasbra's deleted one, but Adapting returns the favor. It's a big knock-up from Benji. Barracuda left defensively, air striking away. SOT takes to the skies, but Benji, he's gotten rid of Venenu. A 2 for 2 as we stand. Another 1v1 on the backside, a 1v1 on the other side of the jungle. Big Man Tings, he's here to help Cyclone Spin try to get rid of SOT. Beads used and only Blink available. And that's the final nail in the coffin for SOT's life. But Benji, he goes down as well. It's a 2 versus 2.
No way.
Both carries left alive. We may be racing bases.
No way, no other way to end it, right? Yeah, this is the right call by Big Man and Cyclone, because you've got enhanced fire on one side, so no backdoor protections. No one has a wave, and you've got a Fafnir coerce. So this is the right call to make sure that your base just gets defended. I think that really did catch Renegades off guard, and really the fact that Tings and Cyclone survive is the real big deal. Venenu gets killed, and DPS is what's most important, because damage dealers are able to beat tanks at this point in the game. Smite's a game of rock, paper, scissors, and at this point, mages with full power builds and ADCs, you know, you're playing rock, paper, scissors, they're the jerk kid who does like the gun or something like that. Like, oh, I beat everything. Like, yeah, you've got full build, bro. Of course you beat everything. So it's all just important to make sure that your damage dealers stay up, and Tings does a great job of being in the right fight. Solar Troll, I think, commits the wrong area right there. He dunks on Cyclone. Both Barra and Cyclone end up in the exact same spot on opposite sides of the map. They're both away from their base by where the tier 1 towers once stood. But instead of grouping with the damage dealer, Solo tries to dunk and kill the full HP ROM, which is, again, just not happening at this point.
Right.
You just don't have the damage to do it.
Aurora's been so far forward in a lot of these fights as well, and that is not the point. Obviously, you expect that Terra to be up there engaging on some of these fights, but at 0, 12, and 13, he's just kind of been a damage sponge, I think, for Venenu. This Agni has just absolutely poured in damage to Aurora as Aurora's walked forward in some of these fights. Granted, there have been some big fights turned around by Aurora, but you wonder if in some of those moments, maybe a slightly delayed engage is the way to go here. I fall to a bit of a hush because the Renegades and Radiance, I mean, in all these moments, it just takes one wild Jake dive or Aurora dashing in to open things up.
Yeah, this game is certainly on the razor's edge. And this grouping from Radiance is really trying to punish was trying to punish, again, someone from Renegades being out of position. When you're grouped as 5, you just have the advantage. You have the initiative. But Renegades stay disciplined, they stay grouped, and they don't get picked, which is really been problematic for both sides through the first 57 minutes of this game.
All right, how many sit-ups has Lodros done in one game span, right? He's made his way back to 1,000 in Game 3 here of this. Contested, though, from Game 1, Aggro. I mean, Renegades really ran away with that one, and it still took them just over 30 minutes, and then 40-something minutes in Game 2 for Radiance. These two teams are close, not only in the standings, but just in how they've performed here today. But this has got to be one of those games that's going to sting for either team. Unfortunately for us, somebody's got to lose this one. Might sting a little worse for the Renegades, given how this game started.
Agreed. Heavy agree. It's just one that, frankly, if you would have given me $50 to say when this game would have ended, I would have instantly said 20, 24, 25. I mean, with the way that the early game went, Renegade should have been able to end this one with ease. But again, it's errors and it's good play from Radiance that have opened it back up. And now you want to talk about true parity. You want to talk about a game that is truly even in every single feasible way. This one is. I mean, I guess Renegades has a tier 2, so their Titan is slightly tankier. Slightly. Right. That Titan that was once nearly invisible on the health bar, now full HP once again for Radiance.
Yep. There is a tier 2 tower in the mid lane, but at this point I argue that doesn't really matter at all. Full relics for everyone as well. That's maybe the most the analyzing that can be done prior to this fight, is both teams have been hyper aware and hyper wary maybe of engagements here over the last few minutes, for good reason though. But it is Radiance who are going to poke their heads a touch further on the opposite side of the Fire Giant pit. And Radiance just going to poke some damage at the FG. It's Barracuda coming back from base. The Jingwei passive certainly helping there. Big Man Ting's playing a touch far forward here. Watch out for Lasbra, though. He's made his way roundabout, but Radiance have some back wardage there as well, so it's not like Lasbra will be able to find his way in uncontested. Mid wave, yeah, pushing in. The left wave pushing for Radiance. Even waves are equal here, Aggro. You wonder who's maybe going to throw that opening swing.
I mean, last time we were at a stalemate like this, Solar Troll did a great job of splitting the map and getting a Phoenix, and I think that that's exactly what you should be doing now if you're Renegades, because you've got the advantage of having an upgraded teleport on your side, and Radiance just doesn't have a good answer to that. I think that at this point, what are you rushing for if you're Renegades? Why do we need to be grouped right now on Fire Giant with all 5? Why can't we let Solar Troll walk that wave from our left Phoenix all the way up to theirs and just be ready to button, a finger hovered over the teleport button the entire time? There's no reason that FG has to be right now. I'm shocked that SOT's coming to this right-hand side, man. There's a massive left wave. Someone pings it out. I think that you just walk this one all the way up left, and you've got to get some decent wards to know if Radiance have left the area. Maybe that's why they're scared. They don't have good ward coverage.
Barracuda.
Yeah, they actually sent Barra back. That's surprising, man. I mean, it's going to take him longer to get back here than it would have Solo.
Look at Radiance. They're going to see that opening and move themselves forward. We have eclipsed 1 hour of game time, by the way. It just seems like this one's so on the edge. one way or the
Welcome,
other,
Dave.
you kind of get
Welcome
this
to
vibe
casting
that this-
Smite. Your first. This
Yeah,
is your first hour-long
Paladins were
bad
done
boy,
with
huh?
the day.
Yeah,
25
exactly. This
minutes
is where
of
you guys
Paladins
are
and we're
normally
wondering what the...
you're normally taunting us of, oh, you're still on your first set, huh? Yeah. Welcome to the team. This is what it's like.
Watch out for Jake, though. He's found his way. Aurora is as well. Both frontliners have swapped spots here. SOT up to the skies. There's not gonna be no FG attempt. There's gonna be a fight instead, and it's adapting that'll open up the killings here. BMT has turned around the damage, and he stays alive. It's a big Aegis to keep the mid laner there. Adapting a double kill. Renegades are left decimated. Radiance in 62 minutes are gonna run it down the right-hand side and take game number 3.
You want to talk about unbelievable comebacks. This might be the most improbable comeback I've ever seen in any Smite game. And I've casted a lot more than you have, Dave. It is incredible what Radiance was able to do. No relics on Cyclone, no Aegis for Big Man. I mean, maybe Ven can make the world's greatest individual play we've ever seen.
I may end up with egg on my face because I make the end call and then could turn things around. I think Radiance are just going to turn their attention to the Titan here. Venenu is going to plug down some final damage. Will get Big Man Tings. But Big Man Tings will be happy. He'll be smiling from the grave in 62.5 minutes. Radiance will end up taking the set.
And that's a heartbreaker, man, for Renegades, because we went over how high the stakes were for this set. I mean, Radiance punched their ticket to playoffs in an incredible way to do so, but Renegades really needed this win to feel solid about their chances going into next week. I mean, there's only 1 week of play remaining. Every team only plays once. It's only Saturday, Sunday. Now, they have to beat what E United does, and that's not a great feeling to have. Heartbreaker, man. That's a tough one to lose.
And we're approaching 3 hours into our SPL day here, and we still got another great set to round out the week in Obey and Ghost. This one, it goes the distance, and somehow, that's an understatement. Hopefully Finch and Myth can bullet point it for us on the desk.
I'll do my best there, Dolson. Those first 25 minutes or so where Renegades are in control, turns out that ends up being kind of irrelevant as we have this long, protracted period where they can't seem to figure out how to end this game. And I think that comes down, Mifflin, to a lot of things that Radiance did really well. Adapting and Big Man Tings played out of their minds. Cyclone Spin made great use of the ROM ultimate as well to find some decent damage. But what was the big sticking point for Renegades in eventually breaking open that siege? They just couldn't do it.
Renegades just got bullied out by damage every single time. Every single Phoenix Siege started with Aurora blinking in, sometimes well, sometimes not so much, reflected in his slash line. He finds the ultimate. He's got this huge damage build, then you took a Cyclone Spin. He goes straight into the air, targets out 1, maybe 2 targets to trigger that ultimate to proc. Now the rest of Renegades, on about half health, 3 people each, have to back up. And that's how Radiance was able to just slow it down for the longest. And then, you know, like 15, 16, 17... 20 sloppy fights from Renegades eventually result in a Radiance win.
And I really feel like the initial turning point, Mifflin, it was that Fire Giant steal, right? Remember when Adapting makes his way in there, and Renegades do a thing on that Fire Giant that they'll do for the rest of the game, and it's hesitate. It was a hesitant game from Renegades. I don't know any other way to describe it from them. And that Fire Giant play allowed for Adapting to make his way in with that Fear No Evil, strip it away. And we saw that hesitance from Renegades on the Phoenix Sieges when they had opportunities to maybe go in the game, at least give it a try, and instead they would acquiesce. It just felt like, to me, they were not on the same page.
Yeah, I think you worded it as they're a team that's trying not to lose instead of a team trying to win. But I can't blame them. The stakes are incredibly high. If they lose this game, the likelihood of them going to playoffs is roughly 0. So, of course, they're going to be a little bit hesitant, a little bit butterfly in the stomach. But that said, you need the discipline, you need the mental fortitude to play your own game regardless of the stakes. And Renegades just didn't show it today.
Yeah, man, that's right. It did kind of feel to me like they were a little bit more afraid to lose than actively trying to find their ways to win at different points of this game. And what I really felt like, Myth, even more than that, was that they were disjointed. You know, that even if the call is to maybe try and play it a bit safer, regroup, and look for your better opportunities, then they could have been more on the same page even in that game plan, but there weren't. There were so many times where it felt like Solar or Troll and Awesome Jake wanted to go in aggressively, right? They wanted to dive. They wanted to go try and make plays. They wanted to end the game, but you didn't see that same thing from Lasbra and Barracuda and the rest of the boys. It felt like they were hanging back a bit more. I don't know. I feel like what we really saw was that there wasn't a clear voice in those big moments that everyone was following.
It seemed like there was just a lack of general cohesion with those guys. I mean, you pointed it out. They were not choosing the disengagements properly. They weren't choosing their own engagements. The one time it really looked like all 5 of them were on the same page was about 30 minutes in on a Phoenix Siege, and Lasbra goes way too deep, as does Jake. They both lose their lives. I mean, Radiance was playing on overtime since minute 10. At 20 minutes, it was a 13, maybe 14,000 gold lead in favor of Renegades. I mean, the fact that you're able to lose a game like that is insane. Smite's just hard, bro.
It's tough. It's a real tough game, man, and you got to make sure that you're executing at that top level all the time, or this kind of thing can happen. Look at how this has caused some devastation for Renegades in the standings. Radiance tie now with the Knights at that 7-6 record, holding that 4th place spot, and that pushes E United down to what's starting to look like what could be their eventual home in 7th place, and not good enough to make it to those playoffs. You need to be in that top 6. We do still have another game coming up here today, though. Obey and Ghost will be playing a little bit later on today, and then we'll get a chance to see these same 2 teams playing again next week as well. But this is a heartbreaker. You heard Aggro say it earlier on. That's exactly the right way to put it, man. Renegades had the chance to win this game, and they just couldn't get it done. On the other side, though, the team that's got to be feeling good is Radiance. And I'm sure that Aurora, the leader there for that squad, is feeling pretty good, too. We've got him standing by for a post-game interview.
Yeah, it's got to be heartbreaking there for the Renegades. And it's hard, Aurora, I think, to even look at Game 1 and Game 2 in this set. Back and forth, kind of snowbally one way or the other. So it seems only right to focus on Game 3. So much happens there. First of all, initial reactions to the game. Obviously, you guys come out on top. Obviously, it's got to feel good to lock in that playoff spot.
No, yeah, it's good for sure. First off, a win's a win. I'm happy that we got the win, but I think they played it as bad as they possibly could have played it for us to win that.
Well, there are moments where, and one of the specific moments that I'm looking at is the Titan is left with sub 1,000 HP or something. The minions nearly end the game in your guys' base. And obviously you can't go super in-depth into calls, but how hectic are communications in those moments? It's a big chess game. You got to determine how far out you can push, where the waves can push. How is communication for you guys in those moments?
The only time, it was pretty good most of the time. The only time it got really hectic is when we were trying to end the game, like the one time where we killed them in right lane, and Big Man and Cyclone killed Solo, like at the other side of the blue buff, and when Benji was going on Jake and Barra at our blue buff, we wanted to end there, and we wanted Benji to just stop their backs, but it got pretty hectic there, so he ended up dying, and then they ended up having to back. And then there was another time where I think we won a fight in right where it got pretty hectic, but for the most part, the comms were pretty good and how we wanted to defend stuff.
Well, it's ever so important in a game like that, especially where the Renegades are kind of fired out of a cannon. I mean, it's hard to think of the first 20 minutes when this one goes over an hour, but it's all Renegades all day. 20 minutes, you guys have 3 open Phoenixes and somehow turn things around and win the game. How important, and obviously it speaks, I think, to your cohesion as a team, how important was communication early in the game? When you guys are so far down, I assume never giving up despite things looking completely in the opposite way.
Yeah, I think the play of the game was when Kenneth stole fire at like 24 minutes, because I think if they got that, the game was over. So him stealing that like allowed us to stall, and it allowed them to make mistakes. Because if they got that, even if they made mistakes, they probably would have won. But since they didn't have fire, they couldn't just walk in and end the game for free. So him stealing that like allowed them to make mistakes. Like we put ourselves in a good spot that game, but I feel like they made a lot of mistakes and we just were able to capitalize on them, and we didn't really do anything crazy, I feel like, besides the fire steal.
Well, Aurora, big congrats. That locks in you guys for the Phase 1 playoffs. So not only does it feel good, I'm sure, to win a 60-minute game, but also to lock yourselves in to the playoffs here for Phase 1. So congrats to you guys. We'll see you next weekend up against Sanguine. But everyone at home, stick around. We've still got Obey and Ghost right after this.
Thanks.